And welcome back, not just to the damage report, but the damage report on a Friday. Like chocolate and peanut butter, they just go together so well. And we're gonna add one more fun ingredient to the mix. You've got me, you're probably thinking, hey, when's Brett gonna be back? I know not that many of you are thinking that, but probably a few someday. For now though, you know what we have? A special treat. We are joined once again, Bridget Todd. Bridget, how's it going?
It's going so well. I'm so excited to be here. A great way to start my weekend.
We're gonna have fun here. We're gonna be talking on the first hour of the Young Turks in a little bit. So that's gonna be exciting. I know a lot of people watching this are probably familiar with you. They've seen you on this program and other programs on the TOT network as well. Maybe they listen to There Are No Girls on the internet. If they're not familiar though, what is it that you normally do?
Well, I'm the comms director for a national gender justice organization called Ultraviolet. And I host iHeartRadio's podcast, There Are No Girls on the Internet, where we geek out on all things tech and internet culture and how it intersects with race and gender and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, if you're not listening, please check it out. We would love to have you there.
Awesome, sounds good. And we love to have you here as well. We'd love you slightly more if you were to hit that like button and share the stream so the people know that the show is alive. We've got 90 minutes now, a luxurious 90 minutes that we're gonna settle into and talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Is there bipartisan agreement on something having to do with infrastructure? And if so, is it any good? We'll be evaluating that. Dianne Feinstein, what's going on with her? We're gonna try to figure it out. Trump's doing bad stuff, some to journalists and Dems, some to his most devoted followers. This is gonna be a brutal story. And then we've got garbage people to close out the 90 minutes. So Bridget, I believe it's your first time throwing someone in the trash?
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. There are so many people that belong in the garbage, so I'm excited to dive in.
That is definitely true. Well, just throw them in there. Don't dive in there. It's nasty in there. But yes, we're gonna have some garbage people, so that's gonna be fun as well. Oh, by the way, really fast update on a couple different things. One, you should already know this. You probably already do know this, but after our show is finished, you know what happens? Regardless of whether you're on the TOIT app, on Twitch, on YouTube, it is time for Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie. So you can stay wherever you're at. You can go to youtube.com/indisputable-TYT. That starts at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, and should be a lot of fun. Also, this is your last call, not for drinking, it's too early. What are you on, happy half hour? No, it's the last call for the Twitch pitch. If you wanna be the next TYT streaming star, this is the final countdown, as Job once said. You gotta get your submission in by June 18th, and semifinalists will be chosen after that. Apparently, a lot of good pitches have come in. Do you have one in you? We won't know unless you actually try. So go to TYT.com/Twitch pitch to get the info on that. And with that, Bridget, are you ready to jump into this?
Let's do it.
Okay. Whew, this is gonna be something. Jeffrey Toobin is back after disappearing from public view. Finally, he should have the first time. Disappearing from public view. He is back after being caught masturbating on a work Zoom call. And that obviously has to be addressed as he returns to CNN. So he and Allison Camerota had a talk about it, and boy, do I have some thoughts about this. So here's the introduction to that admittedly incredibly awkward conversation.
I feel like we should address what's happened in the months since we've seen you, since some of our viewers may not know what has happened. So I guess I'll recap. I'll do the honors.
Help yourself.
Okay. In October, you were on a Zoom call with your colleagues from the New Yorker magazine. Everyone took a break for several minutes, during which time you were caught masturbating on camera. You were subsequently fired from that job after 27 years of working there. And you since then have been on leave from CNN. Do I have all that right?
You got it all right, sad to say.
I'm getting mild Scott's Tots vibes here. So Bridget, they have to talk about it. They can't just be like, so what'd you think about Jill Biden's jacket? Well, I mean, not jacket. I'm not saying jacket. I'm saying her coat. What did you think about that? They have to address it. What did you think?
I mean, that was probably one of the most awkward few minutes of television I've ever watched. I think you're right. I mean, it would probably be even worse if they didn't address it. But I don't know that I've ever had this kind of public secondhand embarrassment before. It was the cringiest thing.
Yeah. It was, and there's get ready, hold on to your butts. There's several more videos coming. That was just the intro. And by the way, I'm not necessarily, I can't predict what the audience expects, but I'm not necessarily going to come out on this exactly as they might expect. That said, right off the bat, I wouldn't have had her have to recap it. That doesn't seem quite, maybe that's the most minor part of the story, but make him say what he did. Why does Allison Camerota have to say it and then have him sort of smiling say, "You got me"? Like, I don't like that.
Good point. That it seems a little unfair to make the woman have to go through the incredibly painfully awkward process of breaking this down. He doesn't even really have to say it. He just has to sort of agree that it happened. I didn't even think about that, but I think you're exactly right.
Yeah, so let's dive into the substance of this. Here's the next bit of their talk.
Okay. To quote Jay Leno, what the hell were you thinking?
Well, obviously, I wasn't thinking very well or very much, and it was something that was inexplicable to me. I think one point, I wouldn't exactly say in my defense, because nothing is really in my defense. I didn't think I was on the call. I didn't think other people could see me.
You thought that you had turned off your camera?
Correct. I thought that I had turned off the Zoom call. Now, that's not a defense. This was deeply moronic and indefensible, but I mean that is part of that is part of the story.
Second most minor part of this, Bridget, he's doing a lot of like this. Don't just keep your hands to yourself, visible, but to yourself. Okay, so Bridget, did you doubt? Did anyone doubt that he thought that he couldn't be seen?
I have a hard time believing it. I mean,
believing what?
Believing that he truly thought that he couldn't be seen. I mean, I don't know. All I'll say is, we've all been using Zoom since the pandemic. I think at this point, you know that when you go into a Zoom, your camera's visible. If this is what he says, this is what he's saying. But I also think like I really want to push back on the way that he's framed it, that like, oh, it was just a moronic thing. This is a pretty serious workplace misconduct thing. Like it wasn't just a mistake, a moronic mistake. A moronic mistake is when you reply all on a group email. I really am uncomfortable with the way that he's framing this as a kind of a silly whoops moment, because it's pretty serious.
Sure. So I think we part agree and part disagree, but let's dive into it and let's see. I agree with you that to the extent that he is framing it as not being serious, he's both, I think, objectively wrong, and also it's not up to him. But I do think he needs to make clear if it wasn't intentional, then that's an important part of the story that he needs to make sure we focus on. And I'm trying to figure out if we disagree on this. I just assume obviously it's a mistake, because so the alternative is he was on a work call with a bunch of journalists and purposefully masturbated where they could see. That seems like the quickest way to, that's like a George Costanza, I want you to fire me sort of situation. Like he's done then. So I just assume it can't possibly have been on purpose. Like there have been other people, there have been Twitch streamers that have been caught masturbating or having sex because they forgot that their camera was on or whatever. I have a friend, actually, a journalist, who didn't know that her partner was on a work call, so she walked naked through the background of a shot. Like, obviously accidental things happen. That's not to say that it's not serious, but I assume it had to have been accidental.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't accidental, then we're talking about something like a completely.
Then it's insane,
right?
Like if it wasn't accidental, it's Louis C.K. at that point. Like that's crazy.
I hate to say that, like, I hope it was accidental, but yeah, if it was purposeful, then that's a whole different thing. And I know that mistakes happen. Certainly, I have been on Zoom where things happen where you wish it hadn't, or you're like, oh, that was dumb. But I guess I feel like even if his camera was off, even if things had went the way that he was thinking they were gonna go, it's still really unacceptable.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think we can all agree on that. And even then, there are concerns of like potentially about, well, did he think that his camera was off, but he was still watching their cameras? Because then that's kind of uncomfortable in its own way. Yeah, but I think that's a core part. Okay, there's a little bit more of this. Let's turn to that. After initially getting through the awkwardness of acknowledging that he was seen masturbating on video, Jeffrey Toobin and Allison Camerota move on. Jeffrey says that he has been going to therapy and working to be a better person. He says, I swear to God, he said that he is volunteering in a soup kitchen. Good, I'm glad they need help, but are you volunteering with the blind too? Like that's the most stereotypical, no, I'm seriously trying to change thing, which is good, do your volunteering. And then he mentions that he's working on a book. Don't plug your book right after you hide behind soup kitchens, do one or the other. But anyway, and he's working to be a better person, which that's good. We should all be working to be a better person. But if your point is, it was a total goof, I didn't mean to, well then why do you need to be a better person? That seems to acknowledge something else. Anyway, for me, this isn't so much about him, it's about the experience of the other people who had to deal with it. So that's where Allison Camerota moves to in this video.
I'm sure you've replayed that embarrassing moment over and over many times. Have you ever thought about what it must have been like to be on the receiving end of that Zoom call?
Well, I haven't just thought about it. I've spoken to several of my former colleagues at the New Yorker about it, and they were shocked and appalled. I think they realized that this was not intended for them. I think they realized that this was something that I would immediately regret, as I certainly did. And it was that day that I began apologizing. And that is something that I have tried to continue to do, both publicly and privately.
Okay, and so look, Bridget, he goes on and he talks about bad apologies versus good apologies, and he keeps apologizing. It actually gets a little bordering on pathetic at one point. But anyway, he's really apologizing and everything, and I have no doubt that he would very much like to be able to exist in the public view again. So I buy the apology or whatever. But what do you think about that? What do you think about what should be the continuing consequences? There's already been consequences. He lost his magazine job. He was off CNN for like 7 months. What do you think about the continuing consequences?
Well, I would first want to make sure that there is some very deep, meaningful, like workplace appropriateness conversations and trainings, because clearly this is not somebody who knows how to conduct themselves in a professional setting. So, I mean, I think we should be talking about, I guess I'll put it this way. In the Me Too era, we have gotten so many different kinds of men behaving badly who then make some sort of apology. Sometimes they're kind of good apologies, sometimes they're bad apologies. But I think that just making a public apology and sort of falling all over yourself to apologize verbally or in a statement or whatever, that does not kind of absolve you of this kind of wrongdoing. He talks about volunteering at a soup kitchen. I need him to connect those two for me. Like, what does a soup kitchen have to look like? Workplace masturbation, I think throwing the book in there is a little bit questionable, as you said. I would like to have a deeper conversation about what, in fact, the consequences, other than losing his, New Yorker job, what the consequences actually look like. Just taking a little vacation from the public eye is not necessarily consequences. Like plenty of people live lives without having television shows or without having cushy media jobs. And so I appreciate that he's in a place where he is apologizing, but for me, it's just not enough. I feel that, okay. And again, like thinking about the other coworkers, like how would you ever feel safe getting on a Zoom with him? If his camera's off, like what is he doing? I think these are all questions that need to be answered by him because he's the one that messed up.
That's true. Yeah, it is sort of weird though that like one of the consequences so far has been out of the public eye when that would have helped him avoid all of this if he had just nailed that part to begin with. I agree. I don't know. Like if you, so I don't know if they have to do Zoom calls anymore or whatever, but like, yeah, what would the other employees be thinking at that point? I don't know, but then, and we don't have time to delve into all this. I also think like, so what would have happened if he was newly hired as a person on air and wasn't a senior person? Or what if he was a a producer that was on one of these joint calls or whatever and had done it. Like, I don't know. I wonder about all of these things. And it also seems sort of weird that, like, especially because you pointed out, there's been a lot of forms that this like bad behavior has come in. Like some of them, as we sort of alluded to earlier, is intentionally forcing someone to watch you masturbate. And like some of those people haven't faced the consequences that he did for the probably accidental, but still obviously wildly inappropriate masturbating. So I don't know, it just, I will say, like, there are other people that can do that job. It's not like any one person is indispensable to the world and the world is done if you can't have that person's political take or whatever. I don't know. It's a weird time. Having him on it all is so weird to talk about it. I don't know. No, yeah. Like, okay, so I appreciate on YouTube if you don't find this so interesting, or whatever, you're saying to move on, but like this intersects with a lot of stuff about what's appropriate, what consequences there should be, intersecting with all of us working from home during the pandemic, and that caused a lot of issues. Some of them were just cute, someone's toddler walking in the background. Some of them not so much. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Okay, so let's see. You know what? We're gonna go to our first break just a little bit earlier, so we have a lot of time to talk about the back and forth over infrastructure, the filibuster. Feinstein decided to take some of the heat off of Manchin by being one of the worst senators recently. So, okay, we're gonna move to that now after this. Okay, anyway, here's what's going on. Over on YouTube, Shiny Umbreon subscribed as a tier 1 member. AWJWB did. Amanda Carden did. Thank you to all of you, and to Grace and Anta and Irie Man for subscribing at tier 2. Appreciate that. You get access to our emojis as well as our top 10 list. Wayne Sugihara asked in the super chats yesterday, Top Chef, what about Gayle? So Wayne, I appreciate questions about Top Chef. I watched it. I don't know what's the issue with Gayle on yesterday's show. I don't know. Let's see. Bridget said, I don't usually like other Bridgets, but this Bridget is cool to have as a name buddy. Yay, Bridget.
Oh,
that's good.
How she spells it. I'm BRIDGET. If she is also BRIDGET, then we are,
she is
twin Bridgets. I love it.
She is, yeah. Yeah, I wonder what happened to cause Bridget to turn against other Bridgets at an earlier date. I wonder. Anyway, Franklin Sharpslicer says, happy garbage day, happy garbage day. Got a lot to throw away. Bridget chose well, Dragon Daddy too. We've got a lot before this day is through. Happy garbage day, bada bing, bada boom. Thank you, Franklin. That was, now you need to record yourself singing that for the intro video. Anyway, Nicole says, why was it so urgent at that moment and why wouldn't he close the door? Well, Nicole, you're gonna force me to talk about this more when people are apparently done with it. But yeah, I don't know why it was so urgent. I don't know. Amy Jarrell says, what would have happened if Toobin was female or black? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it would have been the same thing. I don't know. He's coming back. Maybe they wouldn't have been brought back on air after 7 months. Maybe. I don't know. Tori Wisdom says, appreciate TDR doubly when I'll miss the main show, but excited for my first post-vax protest. Don't let cops fired for abuse get hired down the road. See, that is a good protest to get involved in, because obviously we always complain about that. Whenever it's like, oh, the cop brutalized someone. Well, I guess at least they were fired, but were they really, or were they relocated? So I'm glad that people are actually tracking that. Over on Twitch, Code Omega subscribed for 12 months, hitting the 1 year mark. Thank you, Code Omega. Melissa, the Defender Dragon, gifted a tier 1 sub. Thank you for that. Kid of Wolf subscribed for 9 months. This is OMG, John, it's because of you. Well, thank you, Kid of Wolf. I appreciate that. Thank you for being a part of the community. BC Trumpet subscribed for 3 months. Classic Tech gifted a tier 1 sub. Sam Alin, the Kind Dragon, gifted 5 as well. There's been a lot of that going on. Twitch is on fire today. Semper Firedog subscribed for 16 months. Is that for real, Brooke? Is that the only 16-month sub? Is Semper Firedog the longest? That is the first that I've seen. It says, tomorrow's my birthday, and what better way than to celebrate with a TYT sub? Well, happy pre-birthday, Semper Firedog. Thank you for being here. That is amazing. Muffet hit 6 months, but 6 months ain't 16, Muffet. So I'm sorry, I'm not that impressed. No, I'm kidding, but thank you very much for being here. let's see. Oh, Kenny from Philly was responding to a tweet that I had put out earlier. Really fast, I wanna give Bridget a chance to respond to this. I was just curious, who are your favorite people that you've never met? Just off the top of your head, who are some people that bring joy to your life that you don't actually know? If you need time to think about it, we can return to it, but.
I need time to think about it, there's so many.
Okay.
Great question, because I have a lot of like internet buddies that I've never actually met in person.
Exactly.
I might say there are a lot of folks on the Young Turks network that I follow on social media. I listen to their podcasts, and I in my head we're like best friends.
We got, thank you. We'll return to this after this. If you were in that, so that's for that social break, Bridget, that was very nice of you, but no TYT people in the future. We're gonna make this tough.
Oh.
Anyway, thank you. What we are also gonna do is return to the news. So let's move on to this next topic. They've been saying it couldn't be done. A bipartisan agreement over infrastructure. Well, I would respond to their it couldn't be done with, perhaps it shouldn't be done. And we'll see now, because apparently 10 bipartisan group of senators have announced that they've come up with a deal, and we're gonna give you details on it. The first detail is that we're gonna get a statement about it from one of the members of the group, Senator Kyrsten Sinema. So just to give you a bit of an idea about what's likely to be on the bill and what's not, she's involved in the group. So Senator Sinema had this to say: our group comprised of 10 senators, 5 from each party, which by the way, let's just acknowledge that's not even enough to actually get it passed with the filibuster existing, if there's only 5 Republicans on board, but we'll return to that. Has worked in good faith, no you didn't, reached a bipartisan agreement on a realistic compromise. There's little I trust less than Kyrsten Sinema's estimation of what's realistic. So anyway, this investment would be fully paid for, would not include tax increases. We're discussing our approach with our respective colleagues and with the White House and blah, 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 blah. But who's in it? So you have Democrats, Manchin, Shaheen, Sinema, Tester, Warren. So that is effectively a group of, give or take the most conservative Democrats in the Senate. And then on the Republican side, you have Bill Cassidy, you have Collins, Murkowski, Portman, and Romney. And they've come up with this framework that's expected to include about $579 billion in new spending as part of an overall package that would cost a little bit less than $1 trillion over 5 years, about $1.2 trillion over 8 years. It's expected to address a narrower range of physical infrastructure projects and to avoid the Democratic push for tax increases. Let's be specific about that. About rolling back some of the tax cuts that happened just a few years ago under Trump. They're not random tax increases that they just came up with. And it's not even fully going back to the level of taxes that we had under President Obama. They will also, and this is something we are gonna return to, suggest indexing the gas tax to inflation as one of the mechanisms for paying for the plan. So, Bridget, I've thrown a lot out there. We don't know how Biden is gonna respond to this, let alone other senators, but what do you think about what you've heard so far?
I guess I just don't know that at this stage in the game, this is what we actually need. I think that people need, I think in this time we need like bold solutions, bold plans, bold action. Frankly, I don't know why we're supposed to all get so excited that something is bipartisan. Even just the statement that you read from Sinema, so many little bells going off. When I hear these words like, realistic compromise and things like that, it just sounds like she may as well be saying, this is a watered down piece of garbage that is gonna go nowhere. And I feel like that's not what we need. We need big, bold, progressive infrastructure. We need big stances. This is not a time to play small, it's a time to play big. And I just can't imagine that this is gonna be actually something that does that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that I don't like this. I agree. Sinema calling it realistic, well, what does that probably mean? It probably means it doesn't do anything about climate change. It doesn't go nearly far enough. It plays into the months of BS, hey, infrastructure is only a pipe sort of arguments that you had on Fox News that I'm obviously sick of. And I wonder if it could even pass, if it's even intended to pass, because as I said, it doesn't even include enough Republicans in it right now that it would be able to overcome a filibuster. Then you have the question of, would the House actually pass that version? Does Biden even support it? I mean, maybe Biden has already twice significantly cut his initial compromise, what I consider a compromise price tag of $2.3 trillion. So cutting it all the way down to 974 billion. And look, it's obviously complex. I'm assuming that's like for like in terms of the actual numbers over the same time frame. That's only like, what is that, like $200 billion more than the initial Republican offer? So the Democrats will have come down $1.4 trillion. The Republicans will have gone up $200 billion. So they'll have compromised 1/7 as much as the Democrats when the Democrats control the White House, the Senate, and the House. Does that seem like the way the system should work?
Yeah, like how is that a compromise? That's not how compromises work in my book.
No, not at all. And look, maybe they can get enough Republicans. Mitch McConnell says he's open to it. Of course, he could burp and it would be a lie, so God only knows. But Mitt Romney, like potentially, I'm just so sick of the whole thing. It's right around where Biden said he would expect, $600 billion in new spending above the baseline for it to, potentially be something he could sign on to. Which again, think about the signal that sends to the various groups of Republicans and bipartisan, mostly conservatives they're talking about this. He says he initially wants $2.3 trillion, but then he tells them effectively, you can get by with just $600 billion. That's, you negotiated with the 2.3 trillion. Why are you sending them information that allows them to undercut negotiators who might be pushing for more? And bear in mind the cost issue. It's not just what gets included, and this is gonna be far less than what we'd be talking about. So I don't know, like the $500 billion that's supposed to go over, over a decade to building out the EV charging infrastructure that would allow it to finally reach something like maybe kind of like parity with gas stations and would be necessary for us to fully switch over. I don't know if that's gonna be included in there, but they're getting rid of the tax increases. So for the rich, for corporations, they're getting their money's worth with this negotiating group. But then what are they gonna do to help pay for it? They're gonna index the gas tax to inflation. And why not? Because the gas tax is a far bigger share of your income than it is of some billionaire. They don't drive 1,000 times more than you do. And so that is a regressive tax. And I understand that there are some environmentalists that think that the gas tax should go up to disincentivize buying gas cars and all that. That is an interesting philosophical point about the environment. But it is, especially when coupled with getting rid of tax increases on the wealthy, it is 100% making the bulk of the funding of this regressive in nature. Any thoughts, Bridget?
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right. And I just wanna make sure that we lift up this idea that any kind of infrastructure plan that does not have meaningful climate change and does not address climate change in any kind of real way is just falls short, right? And so I hate the idea of continuing to let corporations and wealthy people really just not pay their fair share at a problem that they helped create. And so like, I'm happy that we're having a conversation about infrastructure, but I'm no climate expert, so I don't know the nuances of like what kind of provisions in this bill most climate folks think would be successful or not. But I just think that I want to get away from thinking about infrastructure as like bridges and pipes and really address the sort of meaningful change it could have in our society.
Exactly. Yeah, later on in the show, we're gonna be talking about droughts and the effect that droughts can have on electricity production. So these things are tied together fairly directly. Climate policy needs to be a consideration. And unfortunately, it looks like this bipartisan group is buying into the right-wing framing that they should be entirely separate things. That said, let's turn to another aspect of this, potentially a fun aspect of this, which is for months now, we've been dealing with the fact that people like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, if they want to, can effectively tank any piece of legislation they want because there's the filibuster. And with that existing, you need to get 10 Republicans to have any chance of passing something. And so one or two Democrats, like first of all, that's not gonna happen. But even if it were to happen, one or two Democrats makes it even more impossible. Well, what's good for the faux centrists can be good for the others as well, because with this new bipartisan infrastructure bill, if it doesn't actually address not just the infrastructure crisis that we're dealing with, but explicitly the climate crisis that we're dealing with, then in theory, a couple of senators more on the left could also tank it. And they could say that they're going to as a part of this negotiating process. So we don't know for sure yet how these senators are going to vote, but in response to that bill, the details of their negotiations, Senator Bernie Sanders said, the problem is this country faces enormous issues that have been ignored and neglected for a very long period of time. Even if you look at infrastructure from the narrow perspective of roads and bridges, it's inadequate. That's not me talking, that's the American Society of Civil Engineers. So the idea that after decades of work to get some sort of infrastructure bill, they're not even gonna solve the most core infrastructure concerns might turn off some senators like Bernie Sanders. You have Sheldon Whitehouse who says, I know of 0 people who saw the bipartisan infrastructure excursion as the vehicle for anything serious on climate. Unfortunately, the grip of the fossil fuel political apparatus on the Republican Party is too strong for that. I would just add, and not just on the Republican Party. But we also have this. So here is a bit of Senator Ed Markey on last night with Chris Hayes.
It sounds like to me that they have a package which is climate denial masquerading as bipartisanship. We can't have an infrastructure bill in 2021 that doesn't have climate at its center. And any other bill that we are going to consider that does not have aggressive solutions to the climate crisis will just have that response, which I've been giving, which is no climate, no deal. That's the only way in which we can respond. This bill has to meet the magnitude of the challenges which the climate crisis is presenting to our country and to the planet.
That's not bad. No climate, no deal. Glad to have him and not Joe Kennedy. Anyway, Bridget, should they either in fact or send out a warning shot that if this is, and we need more details obviously, but if it doesn't actually address that crisis, that they will turn and tank it themselves?
I mean, with the caveat that we need more details, I say yes, and why not, right? I think that, I don't think it's helpful to sound alarmist, but Ed Markey is exactly right. In 2021, when you have parts of the country, buying respirators and things like that for fire season, when you have massive droughts and massive heat waves, we're in a heat wave in DC as we speak, it's unbearable. I think it is a farce to put out anything that does not have climate at its center. I think he's exactly right. And I think, this is the time for forceful, urgent action, not climate denialism sort of masquerading as bipartisanship.
Exactly. I like that. Okay, let's turn to another topic, sort of related to this, not explicitly on the infrastructure bill, but it certainly could be a part of it. More and more past opponents of filibuster reform have been indicating that Republican intransigence over voting rights, their attempts to suppress the vote, and their lack of willingness to engage in anything like HR 1, the For the People Act, the John Lewis Act, all of that might change their stance and support some sort of reform. But not all of them, unfortunately. Senator Dianne Feinstein of the most liberal state in the country broke with colleagues who have said they would choose democracy and scrap the filibuster. She says, if democracy were in jeopardy, I would want to protect it, but I don't see it being in jeopardy right now. She said she wants to wait and see what happens with HR 1. Oh, good, let's wait until they filibuster and it's dead. Then we can talk about it. When asked if there were any filibuster reform measures she would support, she said, I'd have to take a look. Right now, nothing comes to my mind. And obviously there have been, for a while, some concerns about Dianne Feinstein. So the specific content, what she just said there is troublesome theoretically. The idea that she isn't even familiar with the potential filibuster reforms that have been discussed. And not even just, getting rid of it entirely, but potentially lowering the threshold for how many votes from 60 to 55 or something like that. Or making it a talking filibuster, or limiting the number of filibusters you can do, or any of these potential things we can talk about. Bridget, she just none of them are on her mind. But more importantly, democracy is not in jeopardy.
Yeah, that it's almost sort of, it's very frustrating to hear her say that. I don't know, it feels like we're living in two different countries. The idea that democracy is not in jeopardy Voting rights are being threatened all over the country right now. Access to abortion is being threatened all over the country right now. Like, I don't know what country she's living in, but it feels very different from the country that the rest of us are living in, where democracy is very clearly in jeopardy. Like, I don't see how someone could see what's going on and not think this is an urgent situation.
Yeah, I don't know what it would have to look like for it to be in jeopardy. But I definitely agree with your point that we are living in at least two different countries. Yeah, I love getting these statements from these old rich senators, and they're like, "What? I don't see a crisis." Well, yeah, if I were you, I probably wouldn't either, because I don't know anything that's going on. I don't know a single working person. I haven't had to do any actual work for literally decades, since before cable TV. Yeah, you probably don't understand it. So I don't know, maybe she's watching, maybe someone from her team is watching. Here's a little bit of what's been going on as you've been ignoring all of it. As of just May 14th, so it's not fully updated, but this is what the Brennan Center has. Legislators have introduced 389 bills with restrictive provisions in 48 states. These are provisions to make it more difficult to vote in a variety of different forms. 22 bills have already been enacted. That was as of the middle of last month. So just in about 3 months, 22 separate bills, 48 different states have been considering cracking down on voting. And that's what we focus on mainly. We've done a billion videos about that, but that's not the whole story. At the same time, and you can get details on this, Steve Bannon at MSNBC has links to individual examples of all this. They've been hijacking election administration systems in literally multiple states, actively undermining public confidence in election results. That's most of right-wing media over the last 6 months. Positioning far-right anti-election ideologues to serve as secretaries of states so that they're in position to overthrow elections if possible. Targeting poll workers, including pervasive death threats. Intensifying voter roll purges to take away people's ability to vote when they have every constitutional right to do so. Empowering poll watchers to intimidate people when they're trying to vote, preparing to exploit gerrymandering to create voter-proof majorities. That's not a new one, it's just gonna get a little bit worse now. And laying the groundwork to allow officials to overturn election results. And I mean explicitly, in the Texas bill, it says if you believe that there was voter fraud, not even enough to actually overturn an election, you don't have to respect the results of the election. So all of this has been going on, Bridget, and none of this is enough to get through to Dianne Feinstein and convince her that something needs to be done.
Yeah, I mean, when you hear everything that you just listed, I don't know if somebody from her team is watching, but it's very difficult for me to understand how someone could acknowledge all of these realities and still say our democracy is not having some sort of urgent crisis. And like you said, I mean, I just want to lift up the fact that we're not necessarily just talking about sort of fringe right-wing folks. This is stuff being pushed by mainstream publications and elected officials, and we've just sort of accepted it. Trump spoke at a rally in North Carolina 2 weeks ago where he still maintained that he had won the election and that it was rigged or stolen from him. So I don't know how she can say that we're not in the middle of some kind of crisis of democracy when all of this is going on.
Exactly, and 2/3 of Republicans believe that Biden won only because they stole it. Not that like, I'm a little bit worried about things that happened, or maybe it had some effect. No, it's Trump would have won, they stole it, so Biden won, that's it. Elections can't be trusted. Somehow the party that was out of power rigged all of these different states that are controlled by Republicans. That's what they believe, unfortunately. And while we've been trying to focus on Dianne Feinstein here, because we've obviously talked a lot about Joe Manchin, I just want to throw out his most recent statements about this. He says, this is yesterday, that things are going in the right direction, pointing to the passage of bipartisan bills cracking down on hate crimes and investing in tech innovation. Okay, I am glad that they got both of those bills passed. I am glad. Obviously, hate crimes always significant. The fact that there's been so much anti-Asian violence in America makes it even more important that we do something about this. By the way, some Republicans still voted against it. Just, I believe it was Josh Hawley, just look into that. The ability of the Senate to pass a couple of obvious, how could you turn against this unless you're Josh Hawley bills, does not mean that the process is working. But he says it's a process that we're all benefiting from. But in what way? So you got those two bills, but they filibustered the commission on January 6th. They filibustered reducing the gender pay gap. So when he says we're all benefiting, who's the we in that statement? Is it that
women who are still making less money to the dollar than men?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're benefiting. I guess some of the Republicans who are ideologically quite similar to you are benefiting. I guess, like your donors are doing pretty well. I guess you're benefiting. Not necessarily the country though. So anyway, progress has been very slow on the filibuster, and that's only in a few. People like Angus King, Jackie Rosen, but on others, Dianne Feinstein. So look at this. Manchin is in West Virginia, and he has to they say, well, no, it's super conservative. He has to be this way. Dianne Feinstein's in California, and this is the best that California can produce as a senator. Anyway, we are going to take our second break. When we come back, things have gotten bad. Did Obama expect it? We've got a recent interview with him. And then what was Trump up to? What was he using the DOJ for in the last hour or last year or so of his administration? We'll turn to some of the revelations about that after this.
Right, I'm gonna run to the bathroom. I'll be back in 4 minutes.
I'll be here. Okay, everyone, I am here, and thank you for being here. Let's see what's going on out there. Okay, in the members' comments, and I'm glad that we're still getting comments from the members. That's great. Lynn says, so there are 7 Republicans on the committee. I'm including Manchin and Sinema in that number. Hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. They haven't flipped positions yet. I don't actually believe that they both will. I think that Sinema is a possibility. I think that Joe Manchin is just so used to pretending to be a Democrat. It gives him a little bit more clout. Sean Umpleby upgraded his membership to tier 3 on YouTube. Very much appreciated. That opens you up to our live Q&A that we're gonna have next week, actually. Non-human humanist in the super chat says, some people work so hard with no breaks, others have breaks while working and harassing even others, referring to the first story. Yep, that is true. Luck Dragon responded to the question that I threw out during the last social break, saying, people who bring me happiness but never met. There is definitely a theme to this list. Let's see if you can pick it up. Patrick Stewart, Brent Spiner, Michael Dorn, Marina Sirtis, Gates McFadden, Jonathan Frakes. I met LeVar Burton last year before the lockdown, so he doesn't count. So apparently a Star Trek fan there, but let's see. Sleeper Service says, my 2 best friends I've never met, as I've been calling them since COVID, are Adam Savage and John Iadarola. Still sane thanks to them. P.S. John, look at the VW E-Up, $22,000, 165-mile range. Thank you, I will. I'm not looking to buy a car anytime soon, and if I did, it probably wouldn't be new. I'm happy with my used Scion IQ, but thank you. If they came out with a version of the car I have now, but that it was electric, I would definitely switch over. Anyway, Deb Wicks says, just wanted to say hi, Dragon Squad. Have a great weekend. You too, Deb Wicks. Hope everyone does. Casey Petty says, it's frustrating when we talk about taxes being necessary for federal spending. Taxes do not pay for federal spending. That's a lie that halts progress. Modern monetary theory outlines this well. Thank you for your thoughts, Casey. In any event, that is certainly how they are acting. And so the debate really becomes, is it going to be reasserting the already unequal tax system that we had just 4 years ago? Or are we giving up on ever getting back to the lofty 37% under Obama? And instead we're just gonna make working people pay more to drive to work and stuff like that. So that's what's going on right now. Sean said, Bridget, nice to hear your opinion. I hope to see you on here more often. You have great insight. Thanks for being a part of the Dragon Squad. What's your dragon name? Bridget, didn't we have a dragon name for you?
I think it was.
Which was it?
Justice Dragon.
Oh, nice. I like that. Okay, good. I'm glad that you remember, because I was sure that we had come up with one. Okay, nice. Sea Salt Chip says Feinstein still being in Congress is elder abuse at this point. Yeah, there was a lot of tweets to that effect. I try not to focus on it too much because I understand it makes some people uncomfortable, and you can go way too far in that sort of commentary and just assume that you can try to pitch literally any older politician as being, unable to discharge the duties of their office, but you can also not go far enough necessarily in ignoring that sort of thing. Anyway, Lawrence Wells says Lady Liberty is bleeding out from taking so many stabs in the back, but Dr. Feinstein says it's fine. If she really has dementia and can't recall, she needs to be recalled. So see, some people do go a little bit farther. So anyway, thank you, Lawrence Wells. I appreciate that. Okay, really fast. Over in Twitch, Z Huddle gifted a tier 1 sub. Thank you for that. Alyssa 365 subscribed to the 3rd month. Mother effing Woman Dragon for the 6th. Thank you for that. Pernicious Squid, with quite the name there, hit 5 months and says Bezos bucks spent on TYT sub makes me feel a little better about using that giant. it takes away just a little bit of the money that'll go to his future space flights, I guess. We talked about that earlier. And BC Trumpet gifted a tier 1 sub to Satsuma. Thank you very much for that. More news after this. Okay, let's get into some of the political scandals going on out there right now. And this one was developing very quickly as we were like producing the show and getting ready to go. But here's what we know as of right now. The Trump DOJ, they got up to some bad stuff at times, and we already knew quite a bit. Here's a new one for you. In 2018, they subpoenaed Apple in order to obtain the metadata of at least 2 Democratic members of the House Intelligence Committee. Okay, that may not shock you at this point, as well as their current and former staff and even family, including a minor. So not just like looking into the personal browsing or communication behaviors of these members of Congress, which would be scandal enough, but their staff and their family members. So these subpoenas were part of an effort to find the source of leaks of classified information in the early years of the Trump administration. I mean, they clearly did not appreciate leaks. This is further evidence of that. Ultimately, the data did not tie the committee to the leaks. Apple informed the committee that the metadata had been seized after a gag order in the matter was lifted in May 2021. That's the only reason that we're finding out about this a couple of years later. The committee contacted the Biden Justice Department, which informed them that the investigation had been closed. So I'm sure some people will consider, well, what's the difference? It's not going on anymore. But it still seems like a massive breach of privacy rights, not just of politicians, but of private citizens that had nothing to do with any of this leaking. Wouldn't make it acceptable if they had been, but they hadn't. Now anyway, while Justice Department leak investigations are considered routine, current and former congressional officials familiar with the inquiry said that they could not recall an instance in which the records of lawmakers had been seized as part of one, let alone people who just happened to be their family members. So Bridget, what are you thinking of the Trump DOJ with the new information that we've had revealed to us?
I mean, I'm sorry to report that none of this is surprising to me. We know that the Trump administration goes after their enemies in this way. I think going after kids who had nothing to do with this, I think is a new level of scumbaggery. But overall, I don't think anybody is really surprised. But I do think there should definitely be an investigation about abuse of power and the way that Trump and his DOJ looked into his political enemies. I think that there should absolutely be an investigation.
Well, it's looking like that might happen. I hope it doesn't require a vote in the Senate though, because that's probably not gonna happen. So let's just get out in front of that. But anyway, we do have responses sort of that have been developing over the course of this morning to that. A little bit more information before we get to that though. The records of at least 12 people connected to the intelligence panel that the Trump DOJ thought might have been the source of these leaks were eventually shared. Adam Schiff was one of them, Eric Swalwell as well. And so that makes it seem even more personal. The fact that those 2 particular congressmen were focused on, I'm not related to them or anything. It's just that, man, Trump really had an issue with Adam Schiff especially. I mean, Adam Schiff was one of those rare congressmen that got a nickname from Donald Trump. So the idea that the Trump DOJ was focusing on them, that's sort of a problem. Now, what's gonna be done? Well, Adam Schiff, one of the focuses of this, he said Trump repeatedly demanded the DOJ go after his political enemies. It's clear his demands didn't fall on deaf ears. This baseless investigation, while now closed, is yet another example of Trump's corrupt weaponization of justice and how much he imperiled our democracy. I understand that a lot of people watching this probably are sick of Adam Schiff. I understand that. That said, it's still bad. It's bad when Trump did it. It's bad if the Dems do it, and do not write out the possibility that a Democratic administration might get up to something like this. Because when it comes to privacy rights and the weaponization of the DOJ, that is not out of the question. But it's not just Adam Schiff. It's not just people who are focuses of these subpoenas and these inquiries. Senator Ron Wyden is calling for an investigation, saying there must be a full investigation of abuses under former attorneys general Sessions and Barr. And anyone at DOJ who was complicit in these abuses of power cannot be trusted to continue serving in government. And then right before we went live, Nancy Pelosi said, the news about the politicization of the Trump administration Justice Department is harrowing. These actions appear to be another egregious assault on our democracy waged by the former president. I support Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff's call for an investigation. So, Bridget, it might happen. I don't know. What does your gut say about the possible consequences of that investigation?
Unfortunately, I am a little pessimistic about Trump facing any kind of consequences. I would love to see some sort of meaningful consequences, but I'm very pessimistic about it. But I'm also really glad that you brought up, like, I'm no big fan of Schiff, right? But like, privacy rights are privacy rights, even for people that we don't like. And when privacy is eroded, it harms us all. And so I completely agree. It is not ludicrous for me to expect that like folks on the left might do this as well, but there has to be a hard line. This is not acceptable for anybody, because if it does become acceptable and like if it does become the norm, it hurts everybody.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm incredibly pessimistic as well. That said, I love going through the motions of democracy, like doing an investigation like this, knowing that nothing's gonna come of it. And hey, maybe they'll surprise us and there'll be consequences. Like imagine if Barr was stripped of his ability to practice law. Like I don't necessarily care about Barr's future, although I don't completely discount the possibility that in 20 years he'll pop up in Barron Trump's administration. That said, it might send a warning shot for future heads of the DOJ to maybe not engage in things like this. There have to be consequences for future people's behavior to ever change.
Absolutely.
That said, we've got one more scandal for you to close out the time we have in this first hour. So let's turn to this. I didn't know this, but apparently Donald Trump's birthday is coming up, and it's always tough to know exactly what to buy for someone's birthday. So he's simplifying the process for his followers, and he'll accept money, and he's not necessarily going to let you know that it's being taken from you. He's just gonna steal the money from you, apparently. That's actually happening. So this is sort of an update of a story we talked about a few months ago, where he's using these little manipulative tricks to scam his most devoted and supportive followers out of their money, this time tying it into his birthday. So when supporters donate via the website Save America's site, the website automatically ticks a box saying they would like to donate the same exact amount on Trump's birthday, which is June 14th. So if you donate $250, the website automatically opts them into donating $250 more on June 14th. It also, by the way, automatically ticks a box to say that the supporter wants to make their contribution a monthly donation, which is inconvenient if you donate $5. But when you've donated $250, $1,000, that is potentially a significant problem. And we know from past reporting that there are former now supporters of his who lost thousands of dollars, who in the course of just a month might have had $8,000 taken out of their account that they had no interest in donating because they either didn't notice these sorts of things, or there's the belief that it possibly might have been done regardless of that. Those court cases are ongoing. But Bridget, this is pretty dirty. Like they're already giving you money to sort of drain them of even more. Ooh.
It's bad. I mean, I hate to say this. I don't want to blame the victim, but at this point, if you're still giving money to Donald Trump, this stuff is all public knowledge. It is a publicly known fact that Donald Trump scams his most ardent supporters out of their money. And for a lot of folks, like you would really feel that. Like you said, $5 here and there, okay, maybe. Talking about thousands of dollars, that would wreak financial havoc on a lot of people's lives. And so I feel like if you are still giving him money at this point, after we have all of this publicly available data about the fact that he scams people, I don't know what to say. I mean, he scams everybody he comes in contact with. He is a scammer. If people have not internalized that by now, I don't know what to say. I do feel kind of bad for these people because I wonder like how many of them are elderly folks who might not really, it's like, but that just makes it all the more scummy that he does this to his most fervent supporters. It's like, this is someone who is just completely amoral.
Yeah, and to keep it as the same donation, like if I have $500 to give to my God Emperor, and then to take $500 every month, nobody deserves a $500 birthday present. Certainly not Donald Trump. Look, I do feel bad for him. I'm cursed by this damn bleeding heart. I feel bad for people who probably want me to die in agony. But yeah, and by the way, overall, we know, the myth that his followers tend to be economically anxious people who've been left behind. Sure, there's a lot of those. On average, they tend to be a little bit better off than your average American. But that said, few Americans can afford to have hundreds of dollars taken out of their account every month without that doing significant damage to their family. Now that said, there's a couple more little wrinkles to this that I want to get to. And that is that an analysis by The Independent found that Save America sent at least one text message to supporters every day in May, urging them to donate money. Ahead of fundraising deadlines, sometimes they sent texts just hours apart, which seems to me like a great way to get people to opt out of the text messages, because not like if you give, they're gonna keep robbing you every single month. And even then, they're still gonna be begging for more money every couple of hours. That seems like a lot. Then they lied about that too, with some of the texts looking like they were personally written by Trump or his relatives, including Eric Trump and Donald Trump, who remember said years ago they were gonna stay out of politics, or Melania. One example was Eric and Don Jr. It's so important that we're both texting you. Well, how does that work out? Does each one have a thumb on the phone? Are they passing it back and forth? Here's how it works out. Neither of them were involved in this. Neither of them even knows that it's happening. It's so, from top to bottom, so dishonest.
Yeah, it's bad. I used to be the kind of I used to work in places where I sent these kind of donation requests. Every best practice of how you do this, they are breaking, and they're not just breaking it, they're like lighting it on fire. The fake, oh, this is just me personally texting you. The very intense, urgent, I don't want to have to tell Trump that you ignored him. Not
oh
only
my God, yeah.
Goes against the best practices of how online fundraising works.
Yeah, my favorite of that was they would often do on Facebook ads. It was, we're gonna deliver a list of supporters to Trump. You don't want to not be on that list. I just like, you believe that they're like walking into the Oval Office at that point, like a big stack of papers, and he's like, where's Tim? No, that's not happening. None of this is happening. And look, you make the good point that a lot of people do things like this, not necessarily as egregious as the birthday thing or the, like the forcing it to be every month, but it isn't just Trump. And so when we're focusing on this now, and when we were a few months ago, look, it is partially that I want to get through to some Trump supporters and let them know that they're being scammed. Partially, I want them to stop doing this, but I also want this to be a thing that people think about for politicians other than Trump and organizations other than Save America. Be careful of those automatically ticking boxes. I want people to support politicians and groups that they like. Definitely do. I want people more involved in politics, but I don't want them to be scammed, especially working class Americans that are barely getting by and desperately need the help of politicians. What they need least is to have their last dollars robbed by politicians. So give if you want to, that would be great, but I don't want anyone to be obligated to do so. So be aware of this. Now, that said, that is all the time we have for this first hour. So all of you on the linear platform, thank you for watching. Those of you on Twitch and YouTube, we've got a lot more stories to get to. So we're gonna take a short break, but then there's more coming up after this. Welcome back, everyone, to the last half hour, the last third, the best third, they say, of the Damage Report. The linear audience has unfortunately moved on, but we've still got you, Twitch and YouTube. Thank you for being here. Bridget, now we can relax a little bit. And so I wanted to touch base with you. Did you come up with any favorite people?
I did. So my favorite podcast is called You're Wrong About. The host, Sarah, actually both of them, Sarah and Mike, are my friends in my head. If you listen to the show, you know they're always like debunking scams and sort of moral panics. Whenever I encounter something that I know is a scam, I just hear their voices in my head. So they're my best friends, even though we've never met.
No, that's awesome. Well, maybe someday, maybe someday. Thank you to everybody who already replied to my tweet. I grant you that I have a weird Twitter account that occasionally vacillates immediately between, acknowledgments of US complicity and genocide and stuff like that to then, hey, what's a nice thing that's going on? That can be weird, I get it, but that's what you sign up for. Anyway, speaking of signing up, we did want to let you know that we are in our generally once a year sort of membership drive. Our progressive change machine, Be the Change campaign is going on right now. So first of all, if you're already a member, as many of you watching, especially the live show already are, thank you for being a member. Whether you're a member of TYT, whether you subscribe on Twitch, whether you're a member on YouTube, whether my channel or TDR, that's awesome. And I absolutely love that. If you're not, now would be a great time because we have had a reminder over the past few months of all the challenges that face us as a country, as a movement, and to be sort of one of the media parts of that movement to try to signal boost good messages, good candidates, good activists and all that. We do need support. This last year was a reminder of that. It was a rough time. A lot of media organizations either shut down or had to do big cuts of employees. We thankfully did not have to do that because we have you. And we'd like to still have you. And if we didn't already have you, we'd like to. So consider going to tyt.com/change and finding out about membership, the different perks that you get and that sort of thing. So if you could get involved in that, that would be great. Again, reminder, if you're on Twitch and you're interested in potentially streaming for us, the Twitch pitch is in its closing hours. It's closing time, it's last call. Go to tyt.com/Twitch pitch if you would be interested in potentially doing some streaming for TYT. We'd love to see what you've got. Now that's, by the way, really fast. That's the podcast that you mentioned. It's one of Sophie, the producer's favorite podcasts. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Anyway, with that said, why don't we get back into some news? Let's do this. How bad is climate change? Well, it's historic. It's coming to Nevada. Lake Mead in Nevada, the nation's largest reservoir by volume, reached its lowest capacity since the 1930s. The human-made lake is currently at roughly 36% of its capacity. So we've been really focused nationally on the pandemic, on public health concerns. That is definitely understandable. That said, kind of around starting this time, a lot of the country starts to experience wildfires, starts to experience droughts, and the pandemic has not done anything that makes those things less severe or less likely to occur. So we're gonna get into some of the consequences of Lake Mead being so low. But Bridget, this is a reminder. No, all of those problems that we put a lot more attention into before the pandemic, before that took so much of our public consciousness, that is still there.
Yeah, it is still there, and it's so important. I think that for a long time we talked about climate issues like some sort of abstract thing, or talked about it like, oh, save the whales or something like that. But this is urgent. We're talking about people. As we know, climate change disproportionately impacts low income people, people of color, indigenous communities. And so it is a racial justice issue. It intersects with so many issues, and it's very urgent. So I'm so glad to see you representing it on the show. And hopefully if we talk about it with the seriousness that it deserves, we'll actually get somewhere with it.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that. And it is very serious, but it's also serious for a reason that I don't think about very often when talking about this. So first, the obvious one, then we'll get to the less obvious. First of all, roughly 1 in 10 Americans depend on the Colorado River for some of their water. And the basin also provides irrigation for more than 5.5 million acres in the Southwest. So right off the bat, actual access to water for individuals, water for agriculture, this is significant. And that, look, they're focusing on this particular river because they're focusing on this particular reservoir, but the drought is real. And we're gonna show you how wide it spreads. there are very serious concerns going forward about access to water for millions and millions and millions of Americans. So that's something that we don't necessarily talk about every day. But bear in mind that when we talk about climate change, we sometimes focus on the extreme weather events like hurricanes and things like that. This is the sort of less sexy, less immediately in your face consequence that is going to have an effect on lots of communities, lots of individuals. Now that said, there is another consequence, which is access to power. In normal years, the dam that reservoir is attached to provides enough electricity for 8 million people. And according to one of the Bureau of Reclamation spokespersons, every foot of lake level decline means about 6 megawatts of lost capacity. The Hoover Dam's energy capacity has already dropped 25% by Tuesday. So it isn't just that we don't necessarily have access to the water, and that theoretically it being down to 36% now, imagine, project out 10, 20 years and imagine what if it actually runs dry. But that is actually a very necessary source of electricity for a lot of people. And it's happening at a time where we're having this conversation about what our infrastructure priorities should be for energy production. I don't know, I kind of think this should be major news to help drive that conversation in a productive direction, Bridget.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as we said earlier in the top of the show, any infrastructure plan that does not center climate change is just not enough. And as you just laid out, talking about this water reservoir, it's like, this is people's actual lives. It's people, how we get our water, how we get our energy. We need to be talking about it urgently and sort of pretending that it's not a real problem, pretending that this is not really infrastructure, or not talking about it because it's not as sexy as things like wildfire is a real mistake.
Yeah. Exactly, and could, just like with the wildfires, could result in destruction of farms and things like that, and loss of life. So let's give you a little bit more information what you might have coming up if you live in the Southwest. The record low reading, as well as expected subsequent drops in the lake, are almost certain to trigger a federal water shortage declaration later this summer, which would set off cuts in water allocations to several states. So that's gonna be fun. For individuals, also, it's gonna result in an incredible amount of political strife between different states. But it does let us act out. If you've ever had fantasies of living in Mad Max Fury Road, we're getting closer to it. And by the way, let's just jump ahead to this map of the drought to show you how bad it is. This is as of yesterday. So exceptional drought is that darkest red color that is stretching across most of a couple states. And I'm trying to see, it looks like it doesn't quite hit us here in LA, but we do have extreme drought, so that's fun. Not as good as exceptional, I always want the exceptional, but that is a huge portion of the country, cities with millions and millions of people in them, and agriculture and rivers that feed, actual, like, to get our water. So I don't know, it's so significant. And again, there's the sort of, I guess, the side effect or the silver lining that this is going on when we're having a conversation about how much of our focus on legislation, the budget, and infrastructure spending should be on climate change. But it's also, by the way, happening today. We have this bipartisan group coming out, and they appear to have massively de-emphasized climate change as a part of the infrastructure bill. I don't know, and even this story, like we have an intern, Josh, who brought it to our attention. Great reporting on places like Axios and The Guardian. But is this national news? Is this to the same level as something like the DOJ investigation? Which is serious, don't get me wrong. We talked about it too. But going forward, the implications, I don't know. I feel like this deserves more attention.
I completely agree. I mean, it's so urgent and we're barely talking about it.
Yeah. Okay, well, that said, we're now unfortunately gonna stop talking about it and start turning to a different aspect of science, which is the refusal to accept that any of it actually exists. So, this is gonna be a swift turn from climate change to one of our favorite individuals here on the show, but let's talk about this. Marjorie Greene has been kicked off of her congressional committees. She is, however, still a congresswoman, still influential in the Republican Party. And she, in theory, when the Republicans inevitably take back control of the Senate due to the mismanagement that the Democrats are doing right now, could potentially be in charge of the US's stance on investigations and research into viruses, to understand them, to generate vaccines and all that. What does she believe about that sort of research? Well, she was on Steve Bannon's podcast, and here's what she had to say.
You don't buy the argument that say, hey, the gain of function is all because we got to take these viruses and we got to power them up to look for vaccines and to look for other solutions in case somehow they come up with this. You don't buy the logic of that. Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't buy it because I don't believe in evolution. I don't believe in that type of so-called science. I don't believe in evolution. I believe in God. And there's these viruses were not making people sick until they created them and made them into weaponize these viruses to be able to attach to our cells and make us sick. This has caused so many people to die all over the world. This is a bioweapon. You can call it, people can call it whatever they can for research and to create vaccinations, but there's no need for a vaccine if the virus doesn't make the human population sick to begin with.
Bridget, thoughts?
I just don't even know how to respond to that. I mean, like, what she's saying is so wrong, so anti-science. I mean, it's embarrassing. I'm so embarrassed for her constituents. It's difficult to respond to someone who just speaks in nonsense, and it's unfathomable. It's difficult for me to fathom that we've given someone like this a platform. It's just nonsense.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm gonna try. So, first of all, to interpret what she's saying, part of it is you and I don't consume the same high grade misinformation that she does. So there's a lot of assumptions in what she said. She calls it a bioweapon. So she is so far beyond just the, hey, is it possible that some lab investigating vaccines for the coronavirus might have allowed it to slip out and that's how it started? That's a conversation that's going on. She's beyond that. That is, this was purposefully weaponized. It's not an accident. It is a weapon, a bioweapon that the Chinese apparently released into their own population so that someday it could hit the US. So that's there. That said, one part of this, Bridget, that I kind of like is when she said, I don't believe in evolution. And it might seem weird for me to say that I like that, but isn't that just kind of like comforting old school Republicanism? Like just not believing in science. Like it's bad, but it's better than I believe Satanists are secretly eating all of America's children. Like, yeah, no, most Republicans back in the day just didn't believe in evolution and probably don't now, but yeah, just not believing in evolution. That's like just opposing same-sex marriage. It's like, oh, I get that GOP, that hateful anti-science GOP. It's like a throwback to the 90s.
Yeah, it's almost kind of quaint.
A little, yeah, in a weird way. Now that said, there are other parts of this. So first of all, yeah, if you don't believe in evolution, then you're probably not going to understand quite a bit about viruses, germs, how they're researched, how vaccines are produced. Like a lot of that is unfortunately going to be beyond your grasp. I would also throw out though that the reason they were looking into vaccines for the coronavirus was the fear that at some point it would infect people. And first of all, other coronaviruses have affected people. So the statement that just it didn't until they weaponized it is just 100% false. But for particular strains of coronavirus, they were trying to figure out, will we have a protection against this? So look, I understand all of that is beyond her. It's beyond Steve Bannon. He didn't have her on to talk about this, but I don't know. I feel like people need to understand a little bit about that to understand what might need to be done and all of that. Anyway, yeah. Any thoughts about that?
Well, I just want to say one thing, which is that this is really the problem with things like mis and disinformation. So I'm no scientist, so I don't really know, but I think it's fair to ask the question and do some investigating about where any kind of virus comes from. But when people like Marjorie Taylor Greene just run on nonsense, completely take it to the extreme and say like, well, I believe this was a bioweapon and blah, blah, blah. We're not able to have a measured conversation about what actually happened. It's like picking up the football and running with it. And so I really think that when people spread this kind of nonsense, the conversation that we're not having is like, well, is this worth investigating? What do experts say? What is actually going on? We're not able to have that conversation because we're too busy talking about the kind of nonsense and anti-science mumbo jumbo that people like Marjorie Greene are spewing. And so I would just say that it takes up so much room in the conversation that we're not even able to have legitimate conversations about what's going on.
Sure, let me give you one potential silver lining that is not going to be here, but in theory could be here, which is if you're going to have the idea that this was an intentional release of a genetically engineered bioweapon by the Chinese, if millions of Americans are gonna believe that, then one side effect you'd hope we at least get is, so let's take it seriously. If it's this super weapon that the commies released on us, let's wear masks, let's socially distance, let's get vaccinated. But we don't even get that. She spent every minute up until saying it was a Chinese bioweapon, saying it's made up, it's not actually killing that many people, you don't actually have to change your behavior, and any efforts to stop it from spreading as much as possible is some sort of fascist plot against good conservative Americans. I would have at least liked to have gotten that silver lining. Anyway, we are apparently running very short on time, so we are going to transition over to the main focus of Friday, which is this. It's Friday, and so it's time to take out the trash. Okay, there has been clearly a lot of garbage, high quality garbage, such that our earlier story about Marjorie Greene didn't even land her in here. We're very lucky to have Bridget Todd on the show today for her first Garbage People of the Week. Bridget, who is your first ever garbage person?
I'm so glad you asked. I'm so excited. My inaugural garbage person is Oregon lawmaker Mike Newman, who was expelled from his job because he worked with insurrectionists in his state capital. Back in December 21st, 2020, he let in a group of armed insurrectionists into the Capitol building. Later, just earlier this week, there was a video of him essentially giving them a how-to break into the Capitol. He gave them his personal phone number. He dubbed it Operation Hall Pass, and essentially laughed about the whole thing, lied about it, and now he is out of office. He was expelled, which, of course. So he is my garbage person. He belongs in the trash.
Did you have it looks like you might have a video for this?
I do. This is him essentially training people how to break into the Capitol.
And we're talking about setting up Operation Hall Pass, which I don't know anything about. And if you accuse me of knowing something about it, I'll deny it. But there would be some person's cell phone, which might be. That was just random numbers that I spewed out. That's not anybody's actual cell phone. And if you say, I'm at the west entrance during a session and text to that number there, that somebody might exit that door while you're standing there. I don't know anything about that. I don't have anything to do with that. And if I did, I wouldn't say that I did. So, but anyway, that's the number that I didn't say was. Don't text that number, but a number like that, whatever. And make sure to say what entrance you're at too.
What was that again? Those random numbers again?
Yeah, I didn't really say a number, but if I were to say a number, it might have been something like. You'd have to say what entrance you're at, but don't worry about that. Nobody said anything, and
just random numbers.
There's no there. So anyway.
Oh my God, Bridget.
Garbage belongs in the trash can.
Oh my, I hadn't seen that video. I mean, I knew about the guy, and thankfully he's now been kicked out, but whew, like the instinct for self-preservation was just on air, devoured by the instinct to be the cool guy in the room. Like you could have actually hidden what you're doing to make it a little bit harder to make the case against you, but he wanted to have fun. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, like, but you're on video right now.
Yeah, like that's the thing.
You're clearly saying, you are saying, and that's gonna be used against you in a court of law potentially.
Yes, like if you're gonna do this, don't you're on video, homie. You're giving out your phone number. If you're gonna do this, at least do it in a dark parking lot or something where no one's videotaping you, or it's not gonna be played back later. You very clearly giving out your phone number to insurrectionists.
So he's garbage for supporting these insurrectionists. He's also just garbage at being an insurrectionist. You're just so fumbling and obvious. Be a slick cool guy while trying to be a slick cool guy. Anyway, Bridget, that's a very good garbage person. High marks for your first one ever. And now we turn to my garbage person of the week is going to be two actually, but it's the interaction between them really. It's Tucker Carlson, but I'm gonna give it to Victor Davis Hanson of the Hoover Institution because he was on Tucker Carlson last night and they had one of the worst interactions about childbirth and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Here they are.
It's quickly, do you find it interesting that they are so offended by fertility and nature and the idea that people reproduce and that's okay, that we men and women come together and create new life? Like the whole thing is repulsive to them. Why is that?
Well, I think it's because it started with the feminist movement that they felt that impaired a woman's future. But I think it also reflects reality, Tucker, that the age when people are getting married, having children, buying a home, buying a house has gone from mid-20s to mid-30s. And our crisis right now is that we're not reproducing ourselves. We're about 1.8 rather than 2.1 or 2. And we're suffering from what? Prolonged adolescence. These children, or they have adult bodies, but they have the minds of children. They don't want to grow up. AOC is a good example of a person who's suffering from prolonged adolescence. And she said she doesn't want to have children because of climate change. So it's a phenomenon. I don't know if it's because of $1.7 trillion in student debt or the economy, but they just don't want to take off their training wheels and go out and experience life and its adventures and dangers.
Yeah, it's sad. Even sad for Sandy Cortez. Kind of missing the best part, the fun part, I think.
It is.
I'm gonna miss a couple of the terrible things about that because there are so many. His continued insistence on calling her Sandy Cortez, like a child there. So much of that. First of all, just factually, you gotta love, why don't they wanna have kids? I mean, some of them say it's because of the $1.7 trillion in student loan debt and the economy, but why don't they just take off the training wheels? That's not how that metaphor works at all. That's like saying, well, the road to be on your bike on is only 2 inches wide and you fall over into magma and sharks with lasers on their heads. But I don't know, why don't they take off the training wheels? No, in that case, I want training wheels because it's really dangerous. You just made my case, you bozo. Those are all great reasons why people would be less inclined to have kids. Notably, they're not the reasons AOC has said she's worried about having kids. They are also lying about that. She has said that she's worried about what world she would be bringing her kids into when it comes to climate change. She didn't say, I'm not having kids because of that. And for them to say that, to have that interaction, that obviously planned interaction, just not that long after, in the wake of the Capitol attack, she did an Instagram live where she told Katie Porter that she was scared to die, that she would die on that day before being able to have kids. That was one of the things that she feared would stop her from having kids. Not, she's dumb and childish about climate change or whatever. That was one of the most condescending couple of minutes of video that I've seen in a very long time, Bridget.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. And I hate the way they just openly mock her very genuine pain. Like she went through something pretty traumatic and I hate to see them just openly mocking her for speaking up about it. I think it really sends a terrible message and these people are both garbage.
Yeah, 100%. There's so much more about that that's terrible and we unfortunately don't have time. Just disgusting. And like, yeah, it's the left that's really uncomfortable and fears sex and childbirth. That's definitely what it is. You guys want to outlaw literally everything fun, but whatever. That's my garbage person, that dude. Look up his history. He said some fun things in the past. Anyway, what about you? What about the community garbage person of the week? Well, 32,000 of you voted this week, and here are the top 5 with a triple tie at numbers 5 through 3, I guess. At 6% of the vote, you have Magneto Woman for claiming vaccines cause magnetization. Really? She only got number 5? Also number 5 at 6%, Ben Shapiro for teaching racial slur etiquette. And then also at number 6, Lauren Boebert for calling Representative Omar an honorary member of Hamas. That was a fun one. Well, that leaves at number 2 with 27% of the vote, US billionaires for not paying anything in federal taxes. Hey, fact check, it's not that they don't pay anything, they pay 0.1%. Anyway, but number 1 with 55% of the vote, an overwhelming bit of political garbage, Joe Manchin for blocking progress in the name of bipartisanship. Thank you to all of you who voted this week. Thank you for taking part. Great garbage person there. Bridget, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people see more of your work?
You can follow me on Instagram at Bridget Marie in DC or on Twitter at Bridget Marie. And you can check out my podcast, There Are No Girls on the Internet, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast on.
Thank you so much. And she'll also be joining us on the first hour of the Young Turks the Power panel later today. So definitely stay tuned for that. Also, stay tuned for Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, which is coming up right after this. You can head to youtube.com/indisputable TYT to watch it and to subscribe. His show is awesome. His guests have been awesome. You don't want to miss it. Thank you everybody for watching us throughout this week. We had a few technical hurdles, but we appreciate you sticking with us. Until next time, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.
Oh snap, it's Friday. And you know we got a show for you. So I have some breaking news, well, really an exclusive. And we're gonna get into that exclusive in just a moment. On the show today, we will be joined by Wosny Lambre of Wosnia on Twitch, host of Wosnia. We got the big homie here today, staff writer for The Athletic. Also, my debate guest, remember the bullpen comes up, final block of the show. You have to stick and stay for that. The bullpen today, my debate challenger will be Michael Orishton, who is a Republican congressional candidate, California 53rd District. Should be quite interesting. This fella says really, really insane stuff. I will absolutely challenge him on the record and challenge him on his rhetoric as it relates to policy, President Trump, vaccines, and a few other things. But before we get to that, we have an exclusive happening in a metro Atlanta county, Gwinnett County. Solicitor General Brian Whiteside says that a school board meeting went off the rails according to constituents in his community. Brian Whiteside, well-respected elected prosecutor, also went on record not too long ago and said that he would not be prosecuting individuals who gave water to people while standing in a Georgia line. If you remember, Senate Bill 202 makes it illegal to hand someone water in a line and makes it a misdemeanor. Well, he's the elected prosecutor. He said, if you are not breaking a partisan rule and just handing someone water, we are not going to prosecute you in this office. Well, there's something else happening in his county that must be exposed. I have on indisputable Brian Whiteside, the elected Solicitor General of Gwinnett County, Georgia. Brian, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, doctor.
Also, we have Anne LaFavor. Anne is a victim of a crime. We're going to get into that and why no one has been prosecuted. We've been talking about what's been happening around critical race theory and white individuals in particular counties getting really upset at school board meetings and even outside of school board meetings and creating significant argument around the discussion of curriculum. Well, Gwinnett County now has significant black leadership in their school board. And it seems as if, based on the reports that I've received and information that we've been able to gather on Indisputable, that a certain segment of the community in Gwinnett County, they are adversarial to these new board members and adversarial to their leadership. But before we get to Ann, let me go to the elected prosecutor. Mr. Prosecutor, if you would, give us some background as to what happened on May 17th and what residents of your county have come to your office and said.
Well, what occurred, there was a number of disturbances during the school board meeting where basically there was a rule and it was in writing at the door, I believe, that stated people needed to wear a mask. People then entered the building and began to take their mask off. The chairman, Everton Blair, asked that people not do that and keep the mask on. At that point, a great deal of people started to take the mask off. The majority of these people were white.
Let me make a clarity point here. Everton Blair is an African-American male who's chairman of this board, correct?
Yes, sir. The first African-American male ever elected to the school board. He is the chairman. We have two other people, Ms. Johnson, Dr. Johnson, Ms. Watkins. They are also African-Americans and they are on the school board also. And in regard to that, there has been a great deal of conflict. There has never been this type of conflict or possibility of violence. I've been here approximately 28 years. I started off as a deputy sheriff in Gwinnett County and then got my law degree by working 2 or 3 jobs. During that point, there's never been a disturbance upon the minorities taking the board. Have been constant disturbances, basically disorderly, what I would think would be disorderly conduct. And during this time period, the masks rule was tried to be put back in effect by the chairman. They would not comply. There were people who stood up and said, stand your ground. They can't make us do this. At that point, he asked the people to leave. He asked the citizens, everyone, to leave the room. They did not leave the room. There was no enforcement whatsoever by the law enforcement school police at that time. Although the chairman gave a direct order to tell them to leave, they did not. At that point, people had to retreat. Some of the board members retreated to another room and regrouped. At that point, in my opinion, things got disorderly from what has been reported to me. Ms. LaFavor basically contacted me. She stated that she was almost assaulted by someone, that citizens had to hold that person back, allegedly that there was an attack. We have to use the word alleged. And allegedly there was a law enforcement officer there, but did not make an arrest, did not make a report whatsoever. Ms. LaFavor basically is a respected person in our community, well known on many boards, many chambers. I find her to be truthful. At this point, she had spoken to me on the phone. I told her to file a report with that police department, the school police department. It should be noted that there's been other incidents at these meetings that seem to be very disruptive. My opinion is that at any time someone could be harmed, there's a possibility of weapons being introduced, which would be against the law. We would basically recommend prosecution if they did that. What's disturbing is that there's been no independent report made of this event. We had to have a black female citizen reach out to me as an elected official and ask what to do, then try to make a report. It's also interesting that the person that tried to fight her was white. And what happens in our community, we have the most diverse community in America. You have someone who feels that they're not being treated equally. This is the problem in America today. They ask, why is law enforcement doing something to me, not for me? So at this point, number one, I've asked her to put reports in. And there's been other incidents of disruption before at the school board, yet there's no metal detectors in front of the doors. There's no x-ray machines, and we have disruption and disorderly conduct alleged. So a preventive measure would be for the safety of all to have these type of devices to stop the presence of weapons. And the whole point about that is, the question comes to be, why wasn't there a report made when we have a citizen say they were under attack? And witnesses are present, and I believe everything is recorded there, sir.
Yeah, my team right now, we're working on getting that recording. We should have that recording before the end of the show, but if not, I will make sure that recording is available, that video is available for those who are watching. So let me get this right. You have an African-American chairman of the board, the first African-American ever elected to the school board of Gwinnett County. This African-American male gives out a directive. He says, listen, for my meetings, he's the chairman, he gets to call these meetings. He said, for my meetings, you will have to wear a mask. Parents show up, they decide to universally take off their mask, primarily white parents, and they start chanting, stand your ground, which is a way to kill somebody and claim self-defense, by the way. So they start chanting, stand your ground, and then it gets so volatile that the school board members have to retreat and the crowd is dismissed. Not before there's threat and aggression. Nobody is arrested, even though the police were present. Nobody is arrested, and to this day, we have not heard of any arrest from the situation. Now, let's go to Ann. Ann, you're alleged to be a victim. What happened to you, Ann?
Okay, I sent out April 30th notification to the school system and for them to copy the school board members that for the last 2 months, I wasn't able to attend the school board meetings because it wasn't handicap accessible. And I also stated on April 30th that there was all over the internet and everyone knew that there was going to be a major protest of folks not wearing masks. So I sent them an email bringing up all of that. They accommodated me for both. They had the elevator finally accessible again, so I was able to get up on the floor. And they had a note on the door that says, it was a mandate that you must wear a mask and you could not enter without one. So I come up the hallway and I'm watching and I see a woman named Lori McLean. She walks right in past the SROs, which is the school system police force. Nothing said. So then I'm getting concerned because I have a low immune system. So then this white gentleman says to the SRO, I don't want to get arrested. So if I don't put on a mask, I'll just leave, but I'm not going to wear a mask. So will I get arrested? The SRO told him, we're not enforcing it. Now, I know because I sat down right there by them to listen. So when I got in and I sat down and I started seeing people wanting to sit by me with masks, I started taking pictures because I had put the school on notice that if they exposed me, I would file an ADA complaint. Now, our chair for the school board announced you must wear a mask or leave. So they wouldn't wear a mask, and then I was in fact accosted when I was in the aisles trying to get a picture of all these folks that weren't masked.
Ms. Ann, let me ask you specifically, because we only have a few minutes. What specifically happened to you? Did someone physically touch you? Did someone threaten to harm you?
She ran up on me saying that I wasn't gonna harass the folks I was taking pictures of. They held her back. The SRO was standing there, did nothing. And finally, he pulled her back, but no report was done. He didn't contact me. I had to file the complaint.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Obviously, that is disorderly conduct.
SRO.
Mr. Solicitor, say that again. I can't hear you, sir. Say that again.
Yes, SRO stands for School Resource Officer. They're certified police officers.
Right, and what's ironic about this situation also is the fact that the chairman of the board, remember these police officers actually work for the board. These are school police officers.
Yes,
they
sir.
work for the board of directors for the school system. And the chairman of the board has given out a decree. He happens to be the first black ever elected to the board. And they say very proudly and proclaim it publicly, they're not going to enforce their boss's decree. And when you went to file the police report with this school system police, did they give you any adverse reaction to your filing?
The first thing he said was I in fear? And of course I'm in fear. Now, granted, I stood my ground, but these folks had a Klan type mentality. They showed Klan type tendencies. I mean, this girl wanted to fight. And I'm number one in elder and I'm disabled, but that didn't matter to her. So yeah, I was threatened, I was lunged at. The officer's name is Lieutenant Hamilton. Then he says to me, well, are you willing to prosecute? Are you willing to go to court? I told him, if I called you to file the complaint, of course I'm gonna follow it through. And then I asked him, am I gonna be safe this month? And he's saying, sure. I said, well, you promised me that in May, and I wasn't safe.
Ms. Ann, let me go to the solicitor. You're the elected prosecutor. You are in charge of all of these misdemeanor offenses in Gwinnett County.
Yes.
If this comes before you, are you going to prosecute the case?
Yes, I would prosecute the case if there's enough evidence to go forward, and I'll make the recommendation that is appropriate to the crime. But the point about this is that, number one, there need to be preventive measures this week and have a deterrent effect. You can't empower people by not punishing them in these type of events, and you can't empower them by not stopping the attack and then arresting that person.
When is the next meeting?
It's June 17th. That's this Thursday, this upcoming Thursday.
So the next meeting is coming up. As you know, there have been absolutely no penalty for what individuals did at this meeting, and there are no preventative measures being taken place so far. It sounds kind of like a smaller version of January 6th, where we had all of the warnings. Right, the insurrection. We had all the warnings. We knew something what may happen,
that's exactly
and
correct.
They took absolutely no precautions. That sounds very similar.
Well, they knew before this that things could happen, and they didn't take the appropriate measures.
Wow. Listen, we're gonna follow this story on Indisputable. We appreciate you being bold enough to come on air and talk about it. Miss Ann, our thoughts and prayers are with you. To the solicitor, thank you for standing up. Brother, I followed your career for a while. Thank you for standing up for what is right and standing up with the citizens of Gwinnett County. It is rare to have an elected prosecutor come on live air and talk about what's happening to citizens on the other side when cops do not stand up for those who are victimized. We appreciate you both. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right, we got more on the other side. Indisputable.
All right, thanks, Ann. Oh, you're welcome.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now, these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey. Hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing. I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Jank. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT? Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
All right, welcome to Dr. Rashad Richard Indisputable. This is going to be quite interesting. I don't know if you can handle this much truth on any day of the week. The unrest inside of the black community and communities that support them. It's because these cops are not held accountable. You have a family calling 911, and that family is expecting help, not expecting their loved one to be killed by the very people they pay to protect and serve them. Did you ever notice a cop that you worked with call any black person the N-word or target people because they were black? Nope. But we disagree that somehow police officers are not also subject to the same systemic biases and racism as any other level of law enforcement.
It sounds like for everybody's need who wants to crucify the cops without looking at it.
No, crucify bad cops, brother.
Of
bad
course.
cops.
We don't need the government to step into our lives mandating that we should be wearing a mask.
You putting on a mask, Trey, is government intrusion. But you don't think the government telling a woman what she can or cannot do with her body it isn't government intrusion.
Where does life begin?
You want to go there? I can read it to you, brother.
You seem very well prepared. Certainly more.
Of course, why would I not be well prepared?
They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform throughout this country, so I won't stop, and you won't stop either.
Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
What's happening? Welcome back to Indisputable. Okay, so my first guest, the solicitor of Gwinnett County, Mr. Whiteside, and also Miss Ann, the guest. Very unfortunate, an elderly woman who is disabled. But I'll tell you this, Miss Ann, for some reason, I feel like if this was about 30 years ago, Miss Ann's would have gave somebody them hands. I just feel like that in my heart, okay? Let me go to the chat. We got a lot of viewer comments. Super chat, loser blogger Trump. Chanting in a pandemic is violence by itself, independent of what is chanted. Agreed, especially what they were chanting. Forbezilla Super Chat says, I get two of my favorite babes together today, Waz and Dr. Rashad. Am I in heaven? Chris Nesbitt says, Super Chat, love the show, Dr. Richie. I love you back for loving the show. YouTube, stand your ground. Gypsy Mama says, stand your ground. Chant was a threat of violence. It absolutely 100% was a threat of violence. Scooter High, thank you for your comment. 8 Robert says this is disgusting, and it completely was. Nicole Smith, we have failed miserably, but we don't have to be a failure. I love my country and believe we can. Have to do better. Joga de Rogue, maybe I'm saying that almost correctly. So if a black person would have opened up a can, then he would have been killed or locked up. One or the other, 100% for sure. Agreed, yeah. Could have been my auntie, yeah. Twitch, Snake Anthony 210. Why must we be constantly confronted with injustice in this country? Drew in Georgia writes, COVID has been weaponized by anti-maskers. There have been zero consequences, which has emboldened behavior that puts people's lives at risk. Terry Berriot, at a school board meeting, great example for their children. Yeah, good stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get to Big Waz, let me remind you to always follow the money. If there's a politician, not a public servant, if there's a politician, there's always money somewhere. Here's the difference. A politician engages in transactional leadership. A public servant engages in transformational leadership. People like Bernie Sanders and AOC, those are some examples of transformational leaders. Individuals like corporate Democrats such as Joe Manchin, well, he's a politician, he engages in transactional leadership. Now remember, we talked about the about face of Joe Manchin. I even had US Senator Jon Ossoff on Indisputable earlier this week talking about the fact that Joe Manchin at one time actually supported For the People Act. He did an about face. So all of these Democrats went on air and said, we do not know why he did an about face. Well, AOC came out and said, oh, damn it, I know exactly why he did an about face. Follow the money. Now we have actual proof. We know that Joe Manchin basically took a payoff. Here's the reality of politics in America. Every politician is for sale. That doesn't mean every politician will sell out, but every politician has a for sale sign on them. I would love it if politicians had to do like NASCAR. Let me explain that. You know how NASCAR lets you know who their sponsors are? It's written on the car. So as they're going around the track, You see who pays for them all over the car. I need politicians to wear suits that says Koch brothers, the Chamber of Commerce. That's what we need. At least I know who paid for your funky ass to represent nobody but corporations. Yes, that is your solution, because then the trickery would at least no longer be trickery. It would be honest, transparent, in your face. And if Trumpites still want to support these individuals, or corporations don't feel ashamed and embarrassed, have at it. Buy your politician, but at least the American people will be well aware of who they actually represent, not the people who voted them in. Do you not find it strange that 79% of West Virginians actually support the For the People Act? However, Manchin does not. Do you not find it ironic that Manchin is the only Senate Democrat who is not actually co-sponsoring the bill? Do you not find it ironic that 10 years of no donation from a particular company, all of a sudden he gets money from this company? And voila, he has changed his entire political ideology as it relates to a major piece of legislation. Now, people are getting caught up in the fact that it does increase voter access. That is a good part of the bill, a great part of the bill. But that's not the only reason why these major companies are telling Joe Manchin, no, don't support this bill. It's also because it restricts dark money. It limits corporate influence. It stops some of the bleeding that's happening in this nation as it relates to dollars deciding who represents us rather than the people. To talk more about this, I have the big homie. We got Wosny Lambre, host, Woke Brothers podcast. Woznia on Twitch, TYT, staff writer for The Athletic, my big homie. Thank you for being with me, man.
First of all, it's an honor to be here, and I gotta say, man, producer Brett did not tell me I was coming to church this afternoon, brother. You up here preaching to him, and I appreciate it. Although I regret to correct you, I'm no longer with The Athletic. Although shout to them, I'm at The Ringer now. So I want. Yeah, thank you. Shouts to everybody at The Athletic who I used to work with. Love you guys still. But of course, we had a new opportunity with The Ringer. But I will say this, everything you said about Joe Manchin and the for sale sign is true. There's no other way to describe this besides quid pro quo. What's in it for me? This guy just got a check, and now he's backing out of a bill that he was once the co-sponsor of, right? And nothing's changed about this except for the fact that these guys have made contributions to your campaign. This is just straight up legalized corruption. There's no other way to put it. And what really grinds my gears more than anything, brother Rashad, is that I remember when Bernie Sanders was running for president and people said, well, he's not a real Democrat. He's not a real Democrat because he doesn't put the D before his name, because he called himself independent. What makes Joe Manchin a real Democrat? This is allegedly part of the big party platform, and this guy's going against all his fellow party members. It's ridiculous.
You know, man, I'm reminded of something even under the Obama administration. And see, I bring truth here. That's why we call it indisputable. But under the Obama administration, if you remember, progressive media outlets that are left-leaning, they did not get invited to the White House press parties. They did not get invited to the media meetings or those special White House invites around holidays. But you know who did get invited? Fox News got invited. You know who did get invited? Bill O'Reilly got invited. Those individuals continue to receive invitation from a Democratic president and a Democratic vice president, a Democratic White House, but they did not extend those invitations to progressives who were on their side as far as being on the left, but would also offer critique when they were out of line or out of step with the agenda of progress in America. And I find it very, very sobering what you just said. Joe Manchin is still considered to be a Democrat. Nobody is questioning Joe Manchin like they question our dear brother Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was so much of a Democrat. He's what the Democratic Party had the potential to be. He was so much of a Democrat that he was not recognizable to those who were not, no matter what they put in front of their name. Progress should have been the calling card of the left from day one. Not negotiation, not bipartisanship. I know I get some letters on that, that's fine. That never was the agenda of the left. It should have never been, we just need to get along. So brother, what is your feeling about dark money in politics?
Obviously, it's unacceptable. I don't know how you have a system that's supposed to be part of the will of the people, and yet the very privileged few who have access to these politicians via their vast amounts of wealth get to have a say in a way that's disproportionate to the population of the country, right? If Joe Manchin is gonna talk about this isn't bipartisan enough, well, what does bipartisan mean? If the Republican Party is supposed to be expressing the will of the people, this bill is extremely popular even amongst Republican voters. So what can be more bipartisan than actually expressing the will of the American people?
Yeah, well said. And the proof that is actually connected to a bipartisan group, the fact that West Virginians, 79%, damn near 80% of them actually support the For the People Act. Let me read something. The chamber, who's behind this whole move with Joe Manchin, the chamber, which has launched an expensive lobbying effort against the bill, resumed donations to Manchin's campaign for the first time since 2012. Here's the other part. The bill aims to tackle corporate influence, dark money, foreign attempts to influence American elections, and voter suppression practices in the wake of the 2020 election cycle, which broke campaign spending records. So these rich cats have come in and said, Joe, you are our last hope in making sure we can still buy elections in the United States of America. And that's the real story behind the story. Let me shift gears for a moment. I wish a Karen would. Ladies and gentlemen, we search Karens all across the country because Karens are detrimental to the progress, especially of black and brown people. But there are all sorts of Karens. I want you to meet Chimera Karen. I guess I'm saying that right. Okay, this is supposed to be some conspiracy theory about have human, have something else. It's stuff that a person like Alex Jones would believe in, okay? This is the weirdest 42 seconds of cable news you will ever see. Here's your Karen for today.
Once upon a time, bad people ruled the earth. And then a miracle happened. They called them hybrids. Your kind.
Yeah, bad idea, people. Human chimeras living among us, it's only science fiction for right now. Yesterday, the Senate passed the Endless Frontier Act, a bill that commits nearly $250 billion to promote emerging technologies so that America can keep pace with Chinese innovation. Back in May, Democrats shot down an important amendment outlawing US participation in research that would create human-animal hybrids, also known as chimeras.
It's just so damn silly. They said we're not going to address that. Now remember, this person is doing a news segment, and admits the entire pretext to the news segment is completely fiction. It doesn't stop there. Take two on the video.
China's already doing it, announcing in April that an international team successfully grew human monkey embryos and sustained them for 20 days in a lab. The only question is, what will they do next? Currently, the National Institutes of Health has banned US funding for chimeric research, but that ban could very well be lifted. And who's to say that these agencies will play by the rules anyway? Remember, President Obama banned funding for gain-of-function research back in 2014, but New York AD found a way around it. And they laundered, it's the NIAID group, and they laundered hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Wuhan Institute of Virology through a nonprofit group called the EcoHealth Alliance. The rest is history. Chimeric research is a Pandora's box, that's obviously from hell, that should not be opened. But the scientific community, spurred on by their own hubris, may very well open it using American taxpayer dollars. And if that happens, the Democrats will have blood on their hands for not joining the GOP and stopping it when they had a chance. Joining me now for reaction, I don't even believe, Lara Logan, here we are, it's the 21st century, we're two very smart women, we have to talk about chimeras and how maybe the government might do it.
No, you don't have to talk about chimeras. You are choosing to talk about chimeras. And Waz, did you notice that she actually said the practice is banned in the United States of America? But in her first segment, she said, why didn't the United States explicitly ban this in the legislation? Because, Karen, it's already banned. Waz.
Oh my goodness. And you hit the nail right on the head, brother, when you said you don't actually have to talk about this, right? We talked about the previous bill that would ban, for all intents and purposes, mostly dark money in politics. You don't want to talk about that on Fox News. You don't want to talk about Joe Biden's infrastructure bill that the Republicans refused to vote on, a bill that would bring millions of well-paying jobs to Americans, both Democrat and Republican, all far and wide from east to west. You don't want to talk about the merits of that bill and what Joe Biden wants to do for the American people as far as bringing them well-paying, sturdy jobs that would grant them dignified employment and not having to go work at places like Walmart or McDonald's where employers don't even want to pay you $15 an hour, right? Like, you don't want to talk about that on Fox News. You'd rather talk about this nonsense.
Yeah, and here's a guy that'd rather talk about nonsense too. Let's roll.
Humans won't be told, and the Congress won't discuss, and there will be no law, but a total void on all the genetic experiments.
Just a few weeks ago, I called a press conference and I brought up the fact that human-animal hybrids is one of the biggest threats to our species.
You see humanoids, they're like 80% gorilla, 80% pig, and they're talking. I never told the story on air because it's so fantastical. They had in tanks people with gills, and they're little babies, and they were in there just gulping, clawing at the sides. You see a turtle at the zoo, and it wants out, and you feel for it. They got humanoids crossed with fish and stuff. I mean, we are screwed, people.
Yes, we are screwed because a newscaster has now decided to adopt the narrative of Alex Jones as their actual freaking news story. So, ma'am, you have earned your credentialing as our Karen of the day. Waz.
It's amazing because, I'm reading in the New York Times where they're talking about jobs are having to up the benefits and up the perks for workers. They're talking about how this is a great economy for workers, right? Like, instead of giving people unlivable wages and just horrible working conditions, employers are having to come up with ways to entice people to work, right? Like, that's an amazing thing that people on Fox News should be talking about. Like, yo, look, it's good to go out there and try to find a job today. Instead, we're gonna talk about senators and Alex Jones segments, which, by the way, Rashad, remember, he went to court, it was like a year or two ago, and he said in court, under oath, he said, I don't believe any of this crap.
Yep.
I'm an entertainer. I'm just having fun out there. He actually admitted it and said it. And yet on Fox News, these people peddle these types of conspiracy theories and this type of political dreck. It's hilarious to see.
Yeah, it's quite insane. All right, we got more, man. Y'all remember Jeffrey Toobin? I felt so bad for Jeffrey Toobin when all that situation happened with him. About as bad as I feel for the news anchor that had to interview him recently. Okay, we got more on the other side. It's Friday, it's indisputable. I got you. We'll be right back.
we are onto something that is going to be amazing. But what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you that say no corporate PAC money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats. We're gonna fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free healthcare for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer healthcare, debt-free college, and we are gonna get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're gonna do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Just Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a penny. Absolutely not.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course! So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is you take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and they plant a tree for you, okay? Now you could also choose if you wanna do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But literally every cent makes a difference here. It's Plant Your Change. And if you wanna know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
Now, top. No. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Don't forget, if you're watching me on my Big Homie John's page, TDR, make sure you subscribe to Indisputable TYT on YouTube. Indisputable TYT on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe right now. Go there now. Hit the bell so you can be alerted when I'm live, all right? One day you may wake up and I am no longer there on the TDR page, all right? We won't be there for very long. This is to make sure that you can get an opportunity to see what this show does as well, all right? So make sure you go to the Indisputable TYT page if you like what you get here, okay? Make sure you do that and do that quickly. All right, let me read some of these comments Bureau comments coming in hot and heavy. Zoolander establishment Dems says, congratulations on your first week. Dr. Richard, I'm really enjoying your debates. I wish more people in the media would call out nonsense in interviews the way you do. Well, it is coming. All right, we have another debate today. Lil Krabby Dragon says, dark money won't be made illegal as long as politicians get to vote on it. I am loving Dr. Richard and Waz. Love you back. Mark says, love the Karen's coverage. Yeah, we do too. Okay, Super Chats, YouTube. Keto Boot Forever says, I'm listening at work on my birthday. Happy birthday, by the way. Because I gotta pay bills, but Doc, you make it better. Also, Waz, please say your name with the French accent. Waz, kick it.
What's Lambre?
Okay, that never gets old. The Breaker of Walls says, real talk, exclamation point. Thank you. Once again, make sure you do go to the Indisputable TYT page on YouTube. Oh my God, Ganja Cat 420 says, oh my God, these people are freaking nuts. I could have told you that. Drew in Georgia, I read Drew in Georgia, thank you. And DOTMH, Dr. Rashad Richard translates it very well prepared, thanks. I appreciate it, we tried. We have a whole team here. Big ups to the team effort. Waz, all right. Let me say this in just all sincerity. I feel really bad for Toobin, okay? He gets caught with his staff members doing this thing. You know what he was doing. And it's on camera. It's a staff meeting. And he gets fired. He gets let go from CNN. And this is like in the World Series of politics, right? This is in the middle of when his legal analysis and political analysis would have been front and center on CNN. Now, I don't agree with Toobin on everything he says. That's not, no analyst is 100% in agreement with anybody, right? They are opinion concluders at the end of that analysis. But he gets caught up in this scandal. It is detrimental to him and his reputation. So CNN interviewed him, and this was it was awkward and odd, and I will let you all decide.
Hi, Jeffrey.
Hello, Allison.
It's been a while.
It has been a while, indeed.
I feel like we should address what's happened in the months since we've seen you, since some of our viewers may not know what has happened. So I guess I'll recap. I'll do the honors.
Help yourself.
Okay. In October, you were on a Zoom call with your colleagues from the New Yorker magazine. Everyone took a break for several minutes, during which time you were caught masturbating on camera. You were subsequently fired from that job after 27 years of working there. And you since then have been on leave from CNN. Do I have all that right?
You got it all right, sad to say.
Okay, so let's start there.
Okay.
To quote Jay Leno, what the hell were you thinking?
Or if he was interviewing with me, I would have asked, who were you thinking about? All right, here's more of it.
Well, obviously, I wasn't thinking very well or very much, and it was something that was inexplicable to me. I think one point, I wouldn't exactly say in my defense, because nothing is really in my defense. I didn't think I was on the call. I didn't think other people could see me.
You thought that you had turned off your camera?
Correct. I thought that I had turned off the Zoom call. Now, that's not a defense. This was deeply moronic and indefensible, but I mean, that is part of the story.
All right, I'm interested. What's the other part of the story?
You know, I have spent the 7 subsequent months, miserable months in my life, I can certainly confess, trying to be a better person. I mean, in therapy, trying to do some public service, working in a food bank, which I certainly am going to continue to do, working on a new book about the Oklahoma City bombing, but I am trying to become the kind of person that people can trust again.
Okay, so first of all, I don't distrust the guy. He got caught doing something in his home, and it was extremely unfortunate how it went down. But let me say this. People look at Toobin and they laugh. A wise man taught me one time, when you see something like that happen to a person that's professional, that shows up for work every day, that's consistent, don't laugh, learn. Because you can get caught up in a similar mistake if you're not careful. So Toobin, I'm cool with Toobin coming back to CNN, but I know that there are masses of individuals who will continue to summarize his entire reality based on that one incident. Waz, what say you?
You know, I was a little bit perturbed at the time that the guy got fired. I don't think this is something you should have to lose your job over, right? Like, you know, obviously it was unfortunate. It shouldn't have happened, but I just don't subscribe to this very puritanical American view that people have to hit the fainting couches because they saw one guy's Johnson. And like, it's just human anatomy. It was unfortunate. He should have been reprimanded. The public ridicule at the time was justified. He paid his penance. Let the guy have a job. Let the guy pay his bills. I don't see anything wrong with that. And I hope that he continues to do good work on CNN. Like, again, like you, I don't agree with everything Jeffrey Toobin has ever said or done as an on-air personality, but I think he's a fairly competent cat. And when you survey the landscape of cable news, Jeffrey Toobin is far from, you know, problematic or idiotic or any of those things. I never thought the guy should have lost his job in the first place. But then again, you know, some people say it's easy for me to say that. I didn't have to see his Johnson.
I will say this to the folks that were on that staff call. The videotape never leaked. I mean, obviously the story came out, but they never leaked the video. They obviously figured out a way to keep that under wraps because I'm sure people, you know, when things like this happen, man, people are offered a lot of money to leak a video of something like this, and none of that happened. So big ups to his staff for that. He's doing a lot of volunteer work. He didn't commit a crime. He's doing a lot of volunteer work as if he has a sentence. Okay, cool. You know, it is what it is. All right. To something a little more intentional. Caitlyn Jenner. This has always been really, really odd to me. Caitlyn Jenner. I remember the first time I heard her talk about Donald Trump, and it seemed as if there was some level of fascination with the leadership of Donald Trump. Caitlyn Jenner is now running for governor of California and had a troubling back and forth with host on the show The View. All right, and this was during an interview. Here's some of that, and I go to you, Waz, for reaction.
A lot of Republicans in this country believe that Donald Trump won the election and not Joe Biden. Are you one of those people, one of those Republicans?
I'm not going to get into that. That election is over with. I think Donald Trump did do some good things, and what I liked about Donald Trump is he was a disruptor.
But did he win the election?
But he was a disruptor when he was president. I want to do the same thing. I want to go in and be a thoughtful disruptor in Sacramento. We need to change the system, and I want to change that system for the positive. I'm in it for the people.
I have to cut you off. I have to cut you off.
Whoopi Goldberg to the rescue. So let me tell you why this question is important, especially for those running for public office. Number one, it establishes if you actually believe in democracy, number one. Because if you believe in democracy, you actually can tell the truth about a process that was fair and protected. That was the democracy as we know it in the presidential election. You've had Republicans. Lieutenant Governor of the state of Georgia, he came out, he's a Republican. He said, hey, there was no massive voter fraud. The election was secure. He didn't care that Trumpites would come after him. I need Caitlyn Jenner to be okay with being an independent voice. And the second thing it does, when you answer questions like this, it tells us if you are willing or unwilling to stand up to the Trump chaos. If you're not able to have an independent bone in your body and give a logical analysis, assessment, and conclusion of Donald J. Trump, we have no expectation that if you get elected to higher office, that Trump will not be able to control you. That's why it's important to answer that question. Waz, what are your thoughts about that?
You know, my instinct is to dismiss this as clownish behavior from a buffoon, but you know, my memory's long enough that I remember 2015 when I did the same thing of a certain New York City real estate mogul, so I won't do that here. However, look, let's follow the money, Rashad, as you said earlier. McConnell, the Heritage Foundation, the Kochs, they're like, we're not gonna traffic in that. We're gonna restrict the right to vote, so that when the next one comes, we can beat these fools in court. Let's do it the right way. As soon as it happened, McConnell came out and said, no, the results are what they are. You guys, yeah, we're down with stealing elections, but you guys gotta do it the proper way, through the courts. That's how we do it. Real serious people steal elections via the court, and you see them sort of sodding the ground, laying the groundwork for that to happen in the future. This stuff that Caitlyn Jenner's doing is just clown work. I can't take it seriously.
Here's another video from Caitlyn Jenner.
You're saying you're an outsider, and I understand that, but you're also someone that doesn't have any political experience, and I think that is the criticism that you're getting. But you've said that you'll make up for your lack of political experience by surrounding yourself with really great people. That's a direct quote. But it's been reported that your campaign has so far been assisted by Brad Parscale, the former President Trump's controversial ex-campaign manager, as well as Caroline Wren, a GOP fundraiser who, according to ProPublica, helped organize the rally that led to the attack on the Capitol, as people that you're surrounding yourself with to advise you. So what exactly do you mean by surrounding yourself with really great people?
This is just so effed up on so many levels. It just really is. We only got a minute left. Waz, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I think people just need to pay attention to, one, you got to pay attention to what the power structure within the party is doing. But two, you need to pay attention to what the animating force of the Republican Party is and what the base thinks and how they feel and how they move. Because let's face it, the tail does wag the dog now.
Yeah.
And you know how the base feels does have influence all the way at the top to the power structure of the party. So we need to pay attention to it. But at the same time, I'm not gonna lie. I'm drawn to really be dismissive of Caitlyn Jenner and this entire operation.
Yeah, well, it's Friday, Waz. I had to bring it up. My friend, good to have you on Indisputable. I appreciate all you do and all you bring to the conversation through your various broadcasts as well as your written content. Man, it is a pleasure and honor to have you on the show. Tell people how they can follow you on social media.
Thank you as always for having me, first of all. And yeah, you can find me BIGWOS on every single social media platform. Check out my work at The Ringer. Subscribe to Woke Bros with me and Nando Vila, who's also a contributor to TYT. As always, an honor to be here with you, brother.
Same here, brother. Thank you, man. I appreciate you. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, I got the bullpen coming up on the other side. Michael Orishton will debate me, congressional candidate, Republican in California. We're going to talk about some things he said lately. Indisputable.
No, it's about more than just making glasses. We're talking about the right to see. Did you know that almost 1 billion people worldwide lack the access to vision correction like glasses? Billion with a B. Wow, that's 15% of the world. This is a real problem. Warby Parker thinks so too. That's why for every pair of glasses sold, they give a pair away to someone in need. Over 5 million pairs and counting so far. Yeah, that's great and all. But there's still a corporation. Is this just another PR distraction for questionable environmental practices? Climate change is what we still need to focus on. That's a great point, but actually Warby Parker is the only carbon neutral eyewear brand in the world. I really think you're burying the lead here. Oh, really? And what is that? These glasses look amazing. You do look really good. Stop. You look good. I don't think it can be overstated. Turn to the left. Other companies, they make me feel underserved.
What is happening here? You guys, we got to go to break.
Hi, I'm John, and I'm new to TikTok, but about 3 years ago, I started my daily political news show, The Damage Report, because I noticed this trend where every morning I was waking up to this tsunami of news that was just generally dreadful and horrifying and shocking. And I thought that if I could spend my time helping people to navigate this, serving as a bit of a life raft, pointing out which news is important and why, there are worse ways to spend your day. We're not an average news show, and we don't want our TikTok presence to be average either. So feel free to let us know what you'd like us to do on the platform, and maybe give us a follow at The Damage Report.
All right, Amazon Prime members, here's how you can subscribe for free on Twitch. Start by linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, and then click that little subscribe or resubscribe button below the stream on Twitch. Scroll down and select the subscribe free with Prime button, and then you're finished. Close out immediately and share your little subscription alert with the chat. Send a cute message along with it, and bathe in the sweet, twitchy, Bezos-funded love. Hashtag Bezos Bucks.
Hey everyone, Matteo Scarapore here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, who's real suave and good looking, comes in and asks Darren to give him his regular. But for some reason, Darren says no. This man named Rhett Daniels, who's the CEO of a startup called Someone, located on the 36th floor of the same building, is impressed. And he invites Darren upstairs, and then he extends an offer to join his elite sales team. Darren reluctantly joins, and he soon realizes that he's not the only black salesperson there. He's the only black person in the entire company. So he goes through hell and back in order to make it to the top. And once there, he has status, money, power, but he says, you know what? I don't like being the token black guy. So he hatches a plan to help other people of color infiltrate America's tech startup sales teams, redefining what it means to be a minority in the workplace. This book definitely, if you couldn't tell, touches on many things that are relevant to this moment that we're all living in right now. But it's also connected to the many moments in history that have come before today. I hope that you read it. I hope that you enjoy it. And if you want to order a copy, go to shoptyt.com. Thank you, be well, and happy 2021.
All right, welcome back. Don't forget that if you're watching me on the TDR YouTube stream, make sure to jump off. No disrespect to my big homie John, but John won't allow us to keep using his TDR page forever, all right? So make sure you like the page, subscribe to the page on YouTube. On YouTube, Indisputable TYT, Indisputable TYT, subscribe there. It's quick, it's fast, it's easy. Do it now. Okay, hit the bell to make sure you are alerted when we are live. Let me read some viewer comments. Okay, Twitch members, Cray Cray Souffle says, yes, Dr. Rich, establishment Dems and Repubs share the same neoliberal or conservative ideas. Progressives don't and want to change things to better the lives of regular people. Super Chat YouTube, John Mad Dog Hall says, why should the US government fund human animal mutant research when Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos can fund it better? Actually, Gates and Bezos don't have to fund it because they already have Alex Jones. Mind-blowing. Neo Tub Ninja says, Toobin got caught with his member at full stack. Oh, no, I can't. Okay, all right. That just may be too much, Neo. It's funny as hell, though. Keita Boot Forever says, I'm listening at work. Oh, I read you, and thank you. Happy birthday again, by the way, Keita. Twitch, Mama Misa, I hope I'm saying that right because I love your comment. Like I said yesterday, catch that political commentary, Holy Ghost. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. In the bullpen, a man who obviously does not know his own boundaries, he has decided to step in the ring with me, Mr. Michael Orishkin, former congressional candidate, California 53rd Congressional District. He lost the primary election on March 3rd, 2020, but active in the San Diego Republican Party. And he calls himself a champion of ideas over identity. Michael, thank you for being on Indisputable.
All right, thanks for having me, Doctor.
Man, listen, let's get right into it. Do you believe Donald J. Trump will run for re-election?
Why not?
Okay. And do you think he lost the election, or did some mythical creature steal it from him?
I think it's indisputable that the election was a fraud.
The entire election was a fraud?
That's correct.
So let me ask you this, if the entire election was a fraud, because you voted, correct?
That's right.
When you voted in the presidential election, for the general election, were there other people on the ballot as well?
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's a strong indicator of the fraud, right? Is that you have such disparity between the lead Democratic senatorial candidate in all these different states where you had a huge bounce for Biden in the wee hours of November 4th. So I think that actually points to a lot of the fraud.
So let me get this right. You're saying that not only did voter fraud happen as it relates to President Donald Trump, but the Republicans down ballot across the country, they experienced the same voter fraud as well.
No, actually, you saw the Republicans kept the House in massive numbers. So
okay, so let me get this right. The other Republicans did not experience voter fraud, but President Trump experienced voter fraud.
No, you've had an unprecedented number of presidential only ballots. That just doesn't happen.
In the general, wait a minute, sir. In the general election, when you vote for president, you just said you've had a retention and even some increases on your down ballot. You even had that statewide throughout many states. They had some Republican increases, right? But but some of those states still went for either Biden or went for a Democratic senator. Georgia's one of them, elected 2 Democratic senators. Seat got taken from 2 incumbents. Are you saying either A, only voter fraud happened to Trump, or B, voter fraud happened to everybody that was on the ballot?
I'm saying, well, those 2 things are not mutually exclusive. If you have a bunch of ballots come in the middle of the night that are fraudulent, and they only have the presidential election for Biden, that's why you're seeing the disparity between Trump and his lead, senatorial Republican option, and Biden and his lead senatorial option. So that's a key indicator, and I'm talking order of magnitude difference.
All right, let me ask you this question. Do you know how many lawsuits were filed from the Trump campaign for election irregularities, and how many were filed by Trump surrogates, various campaign companies?
Let me ask you the return question. Do you know how many of those trials were heard?
Yeah, well, over 60 were filed.
That's right.
Yeah, so over 60 were filed.
Rejected on no standing, so the trial wasn't heard.
So think about this. I want you to consider something, Michael, because I think you're a smart guy based on your educational profile. You had over 60 lawsuits filed, right? You even had the opportunity of the Supreme Court, which is squarely conservative, many of them now appointed by Donald J. Trump himself. You had all of these judges, some of these judges were also outside of the Supreme Court, appointed by Donald Trump as well, and approved by a Republican Senate. You mean to tell me that all of these Republican judges were in on the conspiracy to steal the election from Donald Trump, even those that he appointed to the bench?
Donald Trump did not appoint John Roberts. He's the one who decides what cases get heard.
Okay, wait a minute. First of all, Michael, have you dismissed logic and common sense, brother? Because I feel like, let me tell you why I say that. Out of all the cases that were actually filed in federal court, you had a significant number of those cases filed in front of federal judges who were appointed by Donald Trump. The question is simple. Did those judges engage in a cover-up as well in order to steal the election from Donald Trump?
Well, the number of courts that didn't hear the case, right? You're trying to act like it went to the courts, therefore it went through the courts and it was adjudicated in the proper way. I'm telling you that you're kind of summarily dismissing the fact that the case didn't even make it into the court. Look, it's indisputable. The information's coming out, and so I everybody I know. Do you
believe Trump is going to be reinstated?
Everybody I know is eating crow over everything I was saying a year ago, and you will be a year ago from.
Oh, that's a damn lie. Come on, Michael. Michael, you also said that you were going to win your congressional campaign, and you fell horribly short. So your word means very little here as far as proclamations that you're making.
Where did I say I was going to win my congressional campaign in a D+16 district? Show me where I said that.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Show me where I said that.
Okay, Michael, did you run?
Don't tell me things that I didn't say.
Michael, did you run to lose?
No, I ran because I'm able to articulate the conservative values.
Let's talk about one of those values then. All right, Michael, let's talk about one of those values. This is a really interesting conversation. Do you believe that January 6th was a hoax?
Yes, 100%.
You tweeted something, but let me just remind people of what you tweeted. You tweeted on January 8th that January 6th was a hoax. That was your exact quote.
Yeah.
You also retweeted Marjorie Taylor Greene that said January 6th defendants are being mistreated in jail.
Yeah.
While awaiting trial.
That's right.
Being held in solitary confinement is cruel mental abuse and is a violation of these defendants' rights. So when you say it was a hoax, explain that.
I'm saying that it was a setup. There's clear indicators that the Capitol Police brought people in, and many of these people had brand new. Hey, look, you know what? I challenge you. Go watch Jaden X. Go watch John Sullivan's entire unedited video of January 6th and get back to me.
No.
Yes.
What you're saying is silly as hell. So you're saying that police officers coordinated the Capitol insurrection. That's what you're saying. Cops did.
It's not insurrection. You can't have an unarmed insurrection.
It was a terrorist attack. You can have an unarmed terrorist attack.
You can say whatever you want, but that's
but you can't have an unarmed terrorist attack. You can't. We prosecuted people who were not armed but committed acts of terror.
Yeah, box cutters, 9/11. Yeah.
So number one, you're wrong with the assessment about weapons. There were weapons recovered, as well as makeshift bombs. They also took flagpoles and made them weapons. So weapons were there, and people weaponized other items during that insurrection. So if the prerequisite to the definition of insurrection is to have a weapon, weapons were there, and weapons were found, and weapons have been lost.
Why don't you walk through? Why don't you put for your viewers, put up the top 25 people who are the most, Jake Angeli, John Sullivan, go through everybody in there and go look at their backgrounds. These are people who were placed with brand new Trump gear in there. I'm telling you, 100%.
Oh, man, let me say this, man. Michael, hold on, brother.
We'll get to the bottom of it. That was one place where I differed from the Republicans in saying we don't need a commission on January 6th, because we do need a commission on January 6th.
Okay, all right. So that almost makes common sense what you just said. So I agree with you on that. I agree with you that we do need a commission to investigate what happened January 6th.
Yep.
I completely think you're loony when you say things like Capitol Police brought in these insurrectionists. I think that's ridiculous. But let me ask you, man, do you really believe that the folks who stormed the Capitol were not, in fact, Trump supporters?
I think some legitimate patriots got caught up in the fervor of, hey, let's go into the Capitol. But I think it was fundamentally.
Explain to me what that means, legitimate patriots who are committing crimes.
No, I mean, look, going to a part of the Smithsonian that's cordoned off.
That's not what they did.
It's trespassing.
That's not what they did, brother. They didn't just go to a part of the Smithsonian that was roped off.
So focused on January 6th, why don't you tell me who the Capitol Police officer was who shot supposedly Ashley Babbitt?
My man, you know why I'm focused on January 6th?
A lot of things,
Michael, you know why? Do you know why I'm focused on January 6th? Because it was your ass that put it on Twitter. That's why you put it on Twitter and you said it was a hoax. But you actually have people that have been injured and are dead. Michael, think about this.
Question about civil liberties. Do you think that Amazon should have given the phone records through pinpoint of every single person who traveled from their home state to the Capitol that weekend, whether they were anywhere near the Capitol or not? And some of those people are being canceled and threatened from their jobs. Do you think that is the American civil?
This is unbelievable. Let me say this, Michael, and I just got to be honest, man.
Come on,
Michael, listen to me, brother. This has been a complete waste of my time. Having you on my show has been a complete waste of my time.
That's weird. I appreciate you just said it was a really interesting conversation.
You're arguing from a point like I have never seen the Kool-Aid so deep in an individual before. Never.
Out your mind, dude.
You're to the right of the most extremist person I've ever met in my life.
Who's the most extremist person you ever met in your life?
I've met Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Okay.
Yeah, I've met her.
Yeah, I think she's doing a pretty good job.
I know you do. Of course you do.
Yeah. All right. Well, you can't dismiss me for being somebody who's championing these guys. Come on.
Yeah. Well, I dismiss the ideas that you present as legitimate. That's all I dismiss, brother.
Okay. Well, I'm curious to where your line in the sand on finding the truth on January 6th is.
Well, here's where my line in the sand is. Let's debate that.
I'm pretty sure that you're going to be eating crow when all of these audits, starting in Arizona, it's coming to your state. I believe you're in Georgia. It's coming to your state. It's going to Pennsylvania.
Let me ask you this on a more.
These guys are all going down
on a more common sense level. Okay, that's your opinion. Let me ask you this. Here's the one part we agree with. There should be an exhaustive investigation into what happened on January 6th. And you can't argue that the way it was structured would not have been bipartisan. You got 10 Democrats, you got 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans appointed to a 10-person committee. I think that's as bipartisan as it gets. But Republicans are the ones who said no. The party that you registered under when you ran for Congress, that party said, we do not want to look into what happened on January 6th. But they looked into Benghazi, they looked into the 9/11 Commission, they've looked into Hillary Clinton's emails, but they refused to look into what happened on January 6th. Why?
Because we have a lot of rhinos inside the Republican Party who the real battle right now is between the common man and the establishment. The reason why you saw the fervor for Bernie Sanders is because he's outside. Even though he has got progressive ideas, he's outside the establishment. In the Republican Party, we have people like, I don't know, Kemp. I don't know who paid off Kemp.
Who paid off McConnell? Because McConnell is the one who killed our ability to investigate January 6th. Let me ask you this. You said you got a lot of rhinos, Republican in name only. Which Republican or what Republicans supported investigating January 6th through this commission?
Yeah, that's all available to you. The key indicator are the people who quickly capitulated after the election on November 3rd. Quickly capitulated, said, okay, let's move on.
All
That's
right.
A very strong indicator. The ones that are still fighting, I haven't.
But I'm asking you the question of which Republicans do you support that supported the January 6th commission to investigate what happened on January 6th? Real simple question, Michael.
No, I'm just saying in spirit. I'm not going through and saying you can look that up. They're putting themselves on the record.
Which ones?
Look that up. I'm not here to say okay.
Which ones are saying we should create the commission? Which ones?
Yeah, that's public. You're here for my opinion. That's publicly available factual information.
All right. It seems like if that was so important to you, you would know the Republicans that support your agenda to investigate January 6th.
But Michael, the commission, look, January 6th was an outcropping of the fact that Mike Pence didn't do his job. His job, the reason why we have a constitutional crisis is because the state legislators were bullied into making changes. And now we're complaining about voting rights when we have 17 days of early voting in all these states. It's nonsense. There's no limited access to voting. And this was a bully play.
Let me give you some facts about voting. Let me give you some facts about the actual bill itself. So let's go to Senate Bill 202, which is your Georgia restrictive voting bill. Here's what it does. Here's the restriction it creates.
Is it restrictive as New York's? Who are the people? Who are the big corporations who have pulled out of New York?
Okay, so I'm talking about Senate Bill 202. Michael, I'm talking about Senate Bill 202. And let me explain to you and everyone who's watching where the restrictions came in, since you think there were no restrictions in these state bills. Not only did it make it an actual crime to hand someone food or water without them campaigning whatsoever, it made it a misdemeanor offense, punishable by 1 year in jail. You as a person that's damn near libertarian, if not all the way libertarian, should appreciate the fact that we don't need extra laws on the book to regulate something that's already regulated. It is already illegal to electioneer on the precinct ground. That's already against the law. You don't need to also make it against the law to not be involved in electioneering and to hand somebody water. So I think you and I would agree that should not have been part of Senate Bill 202. Beyond that, another restriction that it created is it de facto eliminated Sunday voting. Souls to the polls, utilized primarily by black churches on Sunday. It was a ministry and civil engagement operation. But the Senate bill said you got to do one or the other, either Saturday or Sunday, rather than allowing Saturday and Sunday to be decided by each county. Also, it takes away the ability of the local Board of Elections director to oversee campaigns if the state legislature decides to appoint their own superintendent. I thought Republicans were for localized government and less government intrusion. However, that bill specifically creates government intrusion, takes away local control from the 159 counties in Georgia under Senate Bill 202. Those things have got to disturb you as a libertarian-like individual.
You know what disturbs me? HR 1 and CTCL and Zuckerberg's play. Where do you stand on those? Because I want to find common ground.
HR 1, I'm for it 100%. I think it's necessary to pass. What element of HR 1 are you against?
You want the mail-in ballot fiasco we had so that we can further undermine our elections?
How many people, what was the percentage of election fraud in the mail-in balloting system?
Well, that would require an actual examination of the fraud, wouldn't it?
That would require you actually looking at a fact or two. You are correct.
All right, and how do you feel about Zuckerberg spending 400 million on ballot drop boxes in Pennsylvania? You like that?
Yeah, I'm fine. As long as the drop boxes are certified by that county and that local government is able to secure those votes, those are American citizens voting and utilizing the convenience of a location in order to express their constitutional right in democracy. I'm good with it.
So you're anti-voter ID too, I take it.
Yeah, you know why I'm anti-voter ID? Fundamentally, you know why?
Why?
You ever ask somebody why? Do you believe voting is a right, Michael?
Yeah.
You do believe it's a right?
Yeah.
Explain this to me. In the United States, in most states, you can legally purchase a gun from a private owner without showing your ID.
They've changed that, not here.
Jess, I got you, but in most states, let me provide the context. Because we have deemed having a firearm is in fact a right. And you don't have to show the ID in order to purchase from a private gun seller. Also,
hey doctor, you ever gone bowling?
Oh, wait a minute, Michael, don't do that, brother.
You ever gone bowling?
Michael.
You ever gone bowling?
Michael, are you gonna let me finish?
You get the $4 rental of bowling shoes, you gotta have an ID. You leave the ID at the front.
Are you finished?
You need an ID.
Okay.
Look,
I'm gonna go ahead, cut his microphone. I'm gonna go ahead and make my point because there are some people that actually care about the truth. Cut his mic.
Requiring people not have ID.
Okay, here's the reality. The reality is this. Every right that you have, your freedom of speech, your right to assemble, all of these rights do not require you to utilize your ID in order to exercise it. None of the rights require that. All of a sudden, you must present your ID in order to exercise your right to vote, when you do not need your ID to exercise any other right. The irony behind that is this: 20 years ago, nobody can hear you, brother, I cut your mic. 20 years ago, nobody in the United States of America had to produce an ID in order to exercise their right to vote. Nobody. It was a trick launched by the Republican Party in order to start massaging who voted, to start limiting who engaged in that process. All right, Michael, are you there? We can bring you back now. All right, let's unmute Michael. Let's unmute Michael. Michael, unmute yourself, brother. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
You muted me. I got to unmute myself.
Yeah, so I don't know why it works like that, man. But once again, go ahead. I'll let you get the final word. The show is about over.
All right. Well, look, the reason for having to show an ID is because the system gets abused if you don't. The system gets abused. One person, one vote. One person, one vote. It's fair. You need an ID for anything else. There's simply no logical argument.
You don't need an ID for every other right, brother. Quite the contrary. And remember, there's no statistical significance of voter fraud in order to warrant the constitutional intrusion of telling me I must present an ID in order to exercise my constitutional right. I appreciate you.
During the 2016 election, I had 4 Uber drivers who told me they were voting here in California, and then they were driving in Nevada to vote there.
Hey, man.
You know why that's possible?
Yeah.
You don't have to show an ID, and you don't have to show where you live. So I'm telling you, you're peddling nonsense if you're telling me that.
Michael, I cannot believe you would say anybody on this planet is peddling nonsense, sir. Come on, man.
There you go. You want my perspective? You got it.
Yeah, I damn sure did. We all got your perspective, brother. And I appreciate you for at least standing up for what you believe in, even if it is bat-ish crazy. I appreciate you being on Indisputable. Thank you, man.
Talk to you next year.
Okay.
I'll look forward to the
okay, yeah. Michael says next year we're gonna all be just to everyone watching Indisputable, I am sorry. I really am. All right. Okay, listen, we got a lot happening next week. I got the big homie Killer Mike on with me next week. We got a lot of surprise guests. Here are the things I want you to know. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. Be good to the planet. And remember, the truth is always indisputable.